Smile, everyone. You're on Blab and YouTube. Hello, everybody watching the video. We're just about to start the recording of the audio podcast, Airline Pilot Guy, episode 213. So sit back and relax and enjoy the show. Let the abuse commence, according to Nev.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Feel the power.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 213.
Flight 209, you are cleared for takeoff. Roger. LA departure 123.9.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 1136 in the Sheraton Hotel in Springfield, Massachusetts. In this episode, the eruption of the Pavlof volcano in Alaska, an EgyptAir A320 is hijacked, a trio of bad boy airline employee activity, and the latest installment of Captain Nick's Plane Tales, an engineer story. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seatbacks in their upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. Flight 213 is ready for pushback. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast with kind of an emphasis on the airline slice of the aviation pie. I'm Jeff Nielsen, a captain for a major legacy carrier. Everybody just knows me as Captain Jeff. And I'm joined today by the lovely Dr. Steph, a doctor and a commercial pilot in the Charlotte, North Carolina area.
Yep, and I opened my mail today and had my shiny new plastic certificate with my multi-engine rating on it. So,
Ooh, nice.
Very exciting.
That
it just feels so much more official when that arrives in the mail, you know.
Yeah. Does it have a picture of Wilbur and Orville on the back?
It does, just like every other one.
Awesome. Well, congratulations, Steph.
Thanks. Good to be back
also,
for 213.
And I feel like I just saw you earlier.
I think I did just see you earlier today. Didn't we have some sort of executive meeting?
Yes, we had an executive board meeting this morning, and we discussed the crew and the personnel aboard the board, and we decided that we're going to vote Miami Rick and Captain Nick off the show. You know, you may have noticed that we haven't had Miami Rick on the show. Well, now you know what. No, just kidding. Miami Rick is here. Hello, Rick.
So glad to have you back, man.
I'm glad to be back. I've missed you guys. I get a message this morning, you know, that I should worry about my tenure, and I go, uh-oh.
Well, you know, we've been looking at attendance, and you haven't been doing very well in that.
Yeah.
Hey, Rick is a pilot for an international cargo outfit, flies the 777 freighter.
I do, and I have scheduling hasn't particularly been helpful the last couple of weeks. I feel like I've been on one week and not on the next. So yeah, I'm looking forward to normalizing my attendance here. You know, the recording of the APG is one of the highlights of my week. So whenever I'm not around, kind of bums me out for the rest of the week. But regardless, I'm here. Interesting week, not a lot of flying. And off to Brazil and Chile tomorrow. So looking forward to flying again a little bit. So
the APG is one of your highlights of the week? What? Didn't you mean to say the highlight of your week?
Well,
okay,
you know,
Steph, we were talking earlier, so I guess we're going to have to pull the trigger.
Sorry.
Yeah, he's just not dedicated anymore.
We're a little concerned about,
No, I'm much more concerned now.
Yeah, Rick and Nick.
Yeah. Anything that rhymes with Nick, Rick, Dick, Slick, you're out of here.
You're gone.
Yes. Okay. So you've been doing a lot of flying, obviously, and we're glad that you're back here with us. And we've saved up a whole bunch of feedback with your name on it. So we're going to clear that out today, hopefully.
I've been looking through the folder. It looks like a lot of interesting stuff. And get those crickets or rickets ready because we're going to need them.
We will be ready to go with that.
All right.
That was another concern we had this morning. I said, wow, it's going to be a long show today.
Yeah, it's going to be. So everybody get all buckled in because it's going to be a long one. Of course, then we have that.
That's what she
Yes.
said.
So let's see what else is going on. So we mentioned that the executive board meeting this morning, Stephanie was flying back from Phoenix through Atlanta and sent me a text last night and said, "Hey, I think we're going to be in Atlanta at the same time. We should probably have breakfast or something." So we did. And that was nice.
And my apologies also to Tyler Herrick because I apparently just missed him in Phoenix last night.
Oh.
Like I was on the rental car shuttle as he was leaving the airport, and it's entirely my fault for not giving him more heads up. So my bad. Sorry, man.
Well.
But that's what prompted me to actually look. And I was like, wait, I'm going to Atlanta. Jeff's flying. I should look at the schedule and see if we're going to cross paths. So
Tyler's loss and my gain. So thank you, Tyler. So, so you went on your merry way to Charlotte, and I went up here to Bradley International and Hartford and Springfield. And I'm in Springfield, Mass right now. Looking out the window, it's a beautiful day here, but it's cold. It's like in the 40s, and it's really windy. And speaking of windy, first leg yesterday to Buffalo was sporty, as they said, as we checked in to ATC. They said moderate turbulence from about 5,000 feet and below, and the previous several flights said that it was sporty. So interesting to hear ATC tell you that something is going to be sporty. And he was right. It was very, very bumpy. But again, mostly down the runway. And the same thing coming in here to Bradley International, Windsor Locks, Connecticut. We were using 3-3, which is the shorter runway, but we had so much wind. The airplane thought it was a really long runway, and but it was bumpy. But and as I was flying the airplane on final, the co-pilot said, "Hey, you keep getting these really windy, bad approaches and landings." And I said, "Yeah, I noticed. I thought of that too." He goes, "You're the one that picked the leg." I went, "Okay, my fault." Anyway,
so no room to complain.
No room to complain.
Just practice.
That's nice though. Tons of headwind, very, very low ground speed. So you just basically stop it like it was a 172. Just first turn off.
Almost.
Take that first exit.
Yeah,
very
that's
cool.
for sure. Faux show, Mo. All right, let's continue on with anything else to add before we go to the coffee fund.
No, I think administrators are taken care of.
All right, let's go with this. This is the Java Jive, sung by the Ink Spots, recorded in 1940. I love coffee, I love tea, I love the Java Jive and it loves me. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup. I love coffee, I love tea, I love the APG community.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Rhyming.
Yeah, thank you. The Coffee Fund is your way to contribute to the show if you have the resources to do so. And it helps pay for media hosting and website hosting. And it's going to help pay for us on our trip to Farnborough in July of this year.
It's getting closer. It's getting closer.
Yeah. We're going to have a great time. Hopefully, if you're over in the UK, you can arrange to meet up with us in July. So we're looking forward to that. So if you want to learn more about the Airline Pilot Guy Coffee Fund, head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. And since the last show, we have contributions using the Coffee Fund Classic method from Daniel Egan and Steve Trumbull. Thank you very much. We raise our glasses and toast to everybody who contributes to the Coffee Fund, what I call the Coffee Fund cadre. Cheers. Love beer. Again, find out more about the fund by heading over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee.
I love Java.
Stand by for news.
Rick and Steph are wondering, which one is he going to start with? We're going to start with the hijacking.
Okay. I picked the wrong one. No.
Yeah, well, Rick got it.
I got it.
Airbus 320, A320, was hijacked this morning, I believe.
It was
Yep.
From going from it was flight 181 from Alexandria to Cairo, Egypt, with 56 passengers, 7 crew, and 1 security officer. Was on approach to Cairo at flight level 150, about 20 nautical miles northwest of the aerodrome. In other words, they were almost to their destination when the crew turned the aircraft north, climbed to flight level 210, and diverted to. I was going to pronounce that correctly. Let me see if I can find that web page that I got here just to make sure I pronounce this correctly.
It looks like Larnaca, but I'm probably not saying that right.
Let's see.
Larnaca.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Put the
Larnaca.
emphasis.
Larnaca.
Larnaca.
In Cyprus.
There you go.
And let's see, they stating they were hijacked. The aircraft received direct vectors to Larnaca and landed safely about 52 minutes later, however, below the required final fuel reserve. 51, yeah, I would imagine, since they were almost at their destination. And then traveling another 52 minutes, they were probably on fumes. 51 passengers disembarked after first negotiations. 1 more passenger, 2 cabin crew, and the security officer disembarked later. A person evacuated the aircraft through the first officer's cockpit window. Yeah, did you see that video?
Not yet. I heard about it, but I haven't looked at it yet.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering who that must have been. One of the crew members, I would imagine.
Yeah, because there's a little bit of a technique to actually getting out the cockpit window. And you need to grab the rope in a certain way. And you need to, at least on the Boeing, you need to deploy it a certain way to make sure that it gets to where it needs to be on the ground. Otherwise, the rope's going to be short and you're not going to make it all the way down. So it's probably somebody that knew how to use it. It's not just throw out the window and just jump out.
I was impressed that nobody,
at least in my
broke
experience.
a leg or worse trying to get down. Because that, even the little bus is pretty high up. So on its gear. And, I think we have some feedback. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get to it on today's show or not, but somebody actually asks a question regarding evacuations from the cockpit and if we practice that. So hopefully we'll get to that. Anyway, so it looks like this guy wasn't a terrorist, that he was just somebody that was mentally unstable or something. And they're not sure exactly what was going on in this guy's head. He was 27 years old, or is 27 years old. He was arrested, and he, I guess, said that he had a suicide bomb belt or vest, and that he was threatening to blow up the airplane. But it turns out that it was not a real vest, and did not have explosives.
Did you see how one of the passengers took a selfie with
Yes,
him?
I saw that.
And I didn't see this part, but I heard on one of the news outlets that the passengers disembarked with all their carry-on luggage. Yay.
Nice.
Oh, lovely.
Way to go.
One of those.
Nice job.
All those duty-free purchases made it fine.
That's the norm now. That's what you do. You just grab all your stuff. If you die, so what? You got to have your stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else about that we want to talk about?
No, but it's a
No, I mean, what else?
basically a good outcome, for a
that?
situation that could have been bad. So
Yeah.
I agree.
thankfully, everyone is okay.
So, hey, if you're flying airplanes
Absolutely.
around Alaska, you should be careful, because on Sunday afternoon at 4:18 p.m., ash was reportedly moving northward from the volcano, and that volcano is the Pavlof volcano, which is about 37 miles away from Cold Bay, almost 600 miles away from Anchorage. So there's not a lot of air traffic up there. But the latest update yesterday morning said that the plume of ash emitted from the volcano has risen to about 37,000 feet and is extending for 400 miles to the northeast. So I guess it could be impacting maybe those polar routes, I would imagine.
Well, that, and I wonder.
Yeah. I remember one. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just wondering, just thinking about a lot of the small towns in Alaska, air traffic is the way that people get into and out of and receive goods and whatnot. So even though it's not affecting the larger cities, perhaps, maybe it's really having an impact on some of those smaller towns was my thought, but I'm not sure where that is in relationship to, just.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, because that usually that ash
is higher
in the
atmosphere,
I guess. Yeah. And a lot of those flights are kind of,
right.
just bush pilots just kind of hanging out down low. But it could be an issue. But I was just going to say that one of the best layovers I've ever had in my career was, I believe, back in 2010, courtesy of that volcano up in Iceland. We crossed over to Madrid, and a couple hours or more than a couple of hours, maybe about 12, 15 hours before we're supposed to take back off on the return flight, we were put on notice that the North Atlantic track system, and basically the North Atlantic, was shut down for traffic trying to cross from Europe to the Americas because of this. And we were in Spain for 10 days. Well, I wasn't just in Spain; I just moved around all over Europe because we had 10 days off with just doing nothing. So it was pretty fun.
Too bad.
So it was a sad situation.
A sad situation. So sad.
The chat room wants us to pronounce the name of that volcano. Eyjafjallajökull, something like that.
Oh, the one in Iceland.
That sounds
it's
pretty
close.
spot on from what I can remember.
Get the last little bit of it right.
So Nev just takes his keyboard and just goes.
Eyjafjallajökull.
No, he just bumps his head on the keyboard.
Yeah.
And he somehow managed to get the little umlaut of the O, which is amazing. Nev,
that is technique. How do you do that?
You do Option U and then O, right? Let's see. No.
And then forehead.
Forehead. The cat jumped on his keyboard.
Yeah, I can pronounce that, but I can't pronounce Farnborough. Go figure.
Man, I love the chat room.
Oh yes, what will we do?
You guys out in podcast land need to join us on a live recording, because this chat room is something else.
Yes.
We take a lot of abuse from them.
No, really, it's too much. No, we really appreciate them. They are a special part of our community.
Yes,
they really are. It's like a live audience recording here.
Yes. So I guess Alaska Airlines did cancel about 20 flights yesterday. I don't know how many today, affecting about 1,300 people. Flights to and from Bethel, Nome, Kotzebue, Barrow, and Dead Horse. Was it Kotzebue?
I think it's Kotzebue.
Of course.
I don't know.
Been there many times. And Dead Horse, not to be confused with Live Horse, have been canceled. And conditions are currently being monitored in Fairbanks. I've been to Fairbanks.
Have you?
Yes. It's very cold.
Very, very, very,
very white.
So, believe it or not, there actually is a QRH, quick reference handbook procedure, for the remote possibility of you encountering volcanic ash in flight. And basically what you're going to do if that happens, well, basically you're going to go through the conditions first. But it says here, volcanic ash is suspected when one or more of these things occur. You get a static discharge around the windshield. So basically, just electric static discharge. You get a bright glow in the engine inlets. And that's also because of that static. You get smoke or dust in the flight deck, because remember, all of that air that's going in through to the cabin is basically tapped through the air conditioning system through the engines to maintain that delta P. There you go. Or you get an acrid odor. And
I'm sorry. Delta P, I should probably do this. There we go.
There you go. So basically, the objective of this checklist is to exit the ash cloud and restart the engines if needed. So what you're going to do is, exit the volcanic ash as quickly as possible by considering an 180-degree turn and consider a descending turn. You have to don the oxygen masks and goggles because you have to treat it as though the air is contaminated. So you want to put your oxygen mask on to make sure you maintain your consciousness. Establish the crew communication. Disconnect the auto throttle. This is in the aircraft that I fly, the 777. No, you need the crickets, not the frogs. There we go.
I'm good. Oxygen mask.
Oh, are you? Okay.
Yeah.
And the thrust levers both to idle. And the reason why you want to bring the thrust levers both to idle is to reduce possible engine damage or flame out, or decrease the EGT, exhaust gas temperatures. You want to bring the engine's temperature down to as low as possible. Engine wing antis off, recirculation fans off, and the APU selector you started. And just basically, try to get out of that ash cloud as soon as you can, because if you don't, that ash has these little like glass particles that bond to the hot turbine section of the engine, just basically seizing it. And once you get an engine failure due to ash ingestion, it's really, really hard to get those engines started up again. So get out of that ash as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's how glass is made, right? Silica from like sand, and I guess the hot section of the engine actually melts that silica and turns it into glass, and then
ceases up, and then it never starts again, and you're done.
Absolutely. As Micah says in the chat room, the ash is silicon, and it melts into glass on the turbines.
There you go.
There you go. Liz says, don't make an ash of yourself. Don't fly in the ash cloud. And can you see it? I don't know. I've never flown in an ash cloud before. I would imagine that perhaps.
You can see them. You can see them. Actually, there's a couple of very active volcanoes around Colombia and Ecuador. I can think of one off the top of my head called the Tungurahua, which is just south of Quito, and that thing is always spewing out ash. And in our surface analysis charts, which is basically you get your upper level type weather stuff, you get a depiction of the geographic location of that volcano and the direction that ash cloud is blowing. So you basically want to stay away from that, fly upwind, and it tells you how high the ash cloud is, and just basically to stay away from it. So and during the daytime when it's clear out, you certainly see the ash, spewing out of that volcano, and it's a quite an interesting sight.
Mike Kuiper says Rick would be hauling ash.
you bet your ash I would.
Oh boy, that's I wish I was faster with these sound effects. Where is my rim shot? Here he is. There we go. Listen to the audio podcast, and this will all be nice and tightly edited and perfectly timed.
Oh yeah,
maybe. If I get around to it.
Depends on how much time you have.
That's enough of that volcano in Alaska. So hey, if you're flying over there, be careful. Okay, I should probably now play this sound effect, which we haven't heard in some time.
Bad boys, what you want, what you gonna do when Chevy Brown come?
Okay, so I think it was the last episode or the episode before we talked about the bad girl, the JetBlue flight attendant that was hauling around 60-something pounds of cocaine and lost her Gucci heels in the process of running away. Well, not to be outdone, we have some other airline bad boys and girls. And let's see, which one should we start with? Let's start with this one. This one occurred first chronologically. A fine, upstanding young man, a United Airlines pilot, is charged with running a string of brothels. Yes, you heard me correctly. He was arrested by police in Texas on charges he ran a string of brothels in apartment complexes throughout Houston. Bruce Wayne, Batman, Wallace, 51 of Houston. I added that. That was not in the article. But his name is really Bruce Wayne Wallace. He's 51 years old. was charged with aggravated promotion of prostitution. Wow, I guess he was angry. And engaging in organized criminal activity, according to a check of Harris County court records. He was jailed after his arrest Wednesday on $15,000 bond. Well, that's not very much. Police say that he was operating about half a dozen brothel apartments with between 6 and 10 women in each. And I think he was getting about $400 per week from each of the women for the arrangement. Do the math. That's a lot of money.
That's what you call portfolio diversification.
That's right.
I guess you could call it that.
I guess. Yeah. So a little sleazy, I'd say, huh? So I guess he was trying to make some extra cash on the side. And so that's example, or what do we call that? What do they call that in the courtroom?
Exhibit?
Exhibit.
Yeah.
Thank you. Exhibit number 1 of bad behavior by airline employees.
You know,
Number
exhibit also comes to your house and pimps your ride, if I'm not mistaken.
He does.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's talk about the next exhibit of bad behavior.
Exhibit B.
Exhibit B.
We have Exhibit 1, Exhibit B.
Yes. Exhibit. Whatever.
Sorry.
How about this one? An American Airlines co-pilot was charged with being under the influence of alcohol. Where did I? Oh, here we go. Big Ron and Liz Piper both sent in feedback regarding this. No, they did the brothel thing. What did I do? I must have deleted it.
It was still in feedback somewhere. I'll find it if you want to do the other one, and then I can.
That's
read the,
okay. We can talk about it.
Skip it. Okay.
It was no. We're going to talk about it, but we're just kind of like off the cuff here. But
Okay.
I'm not going to refer to anything on the Evernote. But the American Airlines co-pilot was, I guess, had gone through security at Detroit Metropolitan, was about to fly from there to Philadelphia when he was, I guess several people kind of noted that he seemed to be under the influence. And before the flight left, he was met by the local police and they gave him a breathalyzer test. And they didn't say exactly what he blew, but 0.04 is the maximum amount that you can, blow or have. What's the term? Be under the influence of. It was the limit. Thank you. The alcohol.
Yeah.
And he was above that, and he was arrested. And my co-pilot said that he had heard that this guy was in some kind of a program already for trying to recover from alcohol or addictive abuse. And I don't know if that's true or not. I didn't see that in any of the articles regarding this incident, but that's sad. It was a long layover, and typically these incidents of people showing up to work under the influence of alcohol or drugs usually occur when you have like a 24-hour layover or longer for some reason. I guess maybe human nature, you think, well, I can really tie it on or whatever, really do it up. And by the time I have to report for, duty, I'll be, good to go. And perhaps you misjudge and you show up, unfit for flying.
Right.
Yeah. What do you say there, Rick?
No, I mean, it's true. That's why, you guys and gals know that the rule for my airline is 24 hours. And that's, I fly tomorrow, and that's why I'm enjoying a cool glass of water here. So
I got to fly in about an hour, so I need to.
Yeah, you want to make sure you don't, don't waste that beer. Finish it up.
Yeah.
So, rules are rules. So if 8 hours is it, then 8 hours is it. Now, one thing is, 8 hours ball to throttle. Another thing is making sure that after those 8 hours, you're still legal to fly, because 8 hours can elapse between your last drink and the time you sign up for work. But if you're not fit to fly, even though 8 hours elapsed, then, you just you're just not fit to fly, you should probably call in sick. And if you are meeting the crew downstairs at the hotel lobby before the van ride to the airport and you see your colleague that way, you just tell them, you know what, you should probably call in sick, dude, because this is only going to bring on a world of hurt to yourself. So, just follow the rules, boys and girls. That's how it should be done.
Sorry, Miss Steph. I didn't notice you were gone.
That's all right.
Looking over here, my phone is going crazy. I'm going, what is this? Who is texting me in the middle of this show? Oh, it's Dr. Steph saying, let me back in, pretty please.
Please. Pretty please.
Okay, thank you. Everybody in the chat room is yelling at me in capital letters.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate your concern for my well-being.
I'm going to have to do now. All this
Sorry.
is not going to be in the audio pod. No, it's not your fault. Well, maybe it is. What did you do? Did you click on the link?
I did.
Yes. Don't
I can't
do that.
I can't do that. Every time I do that, I disappear. So
What did you
no
do?
more.
What did you click on?
I clicked on a link to open up a new web page, and every time I do that, it like kills my bandwidth apparently, and I drop off.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah.
It wasn't me. I did not do the route. All right. Okay. So we were talking about that American Airlines guy.
Yes, we were.
Did you see that? Did you see his mugshot?
I did see the
No.
mugshot. Actually, I saw the picture of him getting the cuffs put on him. It was taken by some passenger or something. Like it was through like a rainy window or something. You couldn't actually make out his face.
He had a baseball cap on to kind of cover his face. But of course, the article I was looking at actually had his mugshot, and he did not look like he was very happy.
Yeah, that would certainly ruin my day.
Understandably.
It would, but come on, you gotta know better than that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
This is a job that is just like the best job that you can have. And why would you screw it up? You know?
I know, right? You wake up in the morning and then you go fly jets, and I mean, you're going to put that in jeopardy over a beer the night before? Are you kidding me, man?
Yeah,
Come
obviously, probably more than just a beer.
Yeah,
Right.
But anyway, obviously, he has a problem. He needs to go through the program to overcome that, and hopefully he'll be okay. So let's just let's pray for the guy, you know, and think about him and try to, you know, hope that he cleans himself up and is able to get back and fly again.
absolutely.
Yep.
All right. Well, we have one more in the trifecta. A Delta employee, not a pilot this time, was arrested. He had a backpack full of cash, $282,400 in his backpack. Jean-Yves Cilius, not sure how to pronounce that, a ramp agent. Do you guys know how to pronounce that, Steph?
Jean-Yves, I think.
Jean-Yves.
Cilius.
And
I don't know about the last name. But
Yeah.
Palm Beach International Airport in Florida. He is 26 years old, used his airport identification to bypass security. And we've talked about this before on the show, how most of the airport workers, if not all, they don't have to go through security. They show up and they go through some kind of an, abbreviated at best method to access restricted areas. And I think that is something that has concerned me for quite some time. And he took advantage of that capability by having his backpack full of cash, went through the so-called sterile area from outside the tarmac ramp, and went to a bathroom inside of the airport terminal where he was going to give this backpack full of cash to someone, all for a fee of $1,000. Unfortunately, the TSA was there and said, or let's see, who was it? An airport operations officer was there and said, "Hey, would you mind showing me what you have in your backpack?" And he said, "Certainly." He was very cooperative, opened up the backpack, and there was a lot of cash in there. And he admitted readily that this is not the first time that he had done this. And he had done it a few times before and had made over $4,000 for his work. So, yeah, he got busted. And, it makes you wonder if he's thinking now, was that really worth it? Because I'm sure he's going to be losing his job and probably going to spend some time in jail.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you'll probably never be able to pass a security check, background check for any of these, security type geared jobs, like, where you need to go through a background check. And I mean, it's not worth it. Just do things right. It's just fishy. Someone paid you $1,000 to carry a bag with $280,000 in it. Oh man, I don't know what to say to this.
Well, it's not the first time. Obviously, in Atlanta at Delta, there was a kind of quite an operation. Ramp workers smuggling weapons, of all things, aboard airline flights from Atlanta to New York, and what do you call that? An underground market for
black market
of weapons and such. And they got busted, and security has really clamped down since that event. In fact, when we go through the parking lot in Atlanta now, we have to go through security checkpoints, and everything is searched. And so
that's good. It's for everyone's safety, So
yeah, absolutely. Now, both of these cases, there was no risk really to passengers, but still, it shows you some of the loopholes in our security system.
Exactly. Cracks in the system.
Yep. Okay. And let's see. Finally, we were going to talk about this event at Anchorage. And I wanted to talk about this because it's always good to kind of, talk about good things that happen for people that work in our industry. Air traffic controllers, even you air traffic controllers, do great things. And in Anchorage, these two air traffic controllers helped guide a corporate jet that was coming into Alaska from Russian airspace last November. They were bound for Nome, Alaska, and they were headed into rapidly deteriorating weather, apparently lacking navigational aids for nearby airports. It was a Dassault Bergère Falcon 10 carrying 3 people, and the weather was bad, and they made an approach, and then they had to miss, and they were going to try it again, and I don't know how many times they attempted this, but finally they decided they were going to divert to their alternate, and then somewhere about halfway to their alternate, this guy decided that he was going to turn around and try it again, and these air traffic controllers, Ron Sparks and Mike Thomas, basically said, no, don't do that. That's not a good idea. The weather has not improved. Continue to your alternate in Unalakleet.
Unalakleet.
Watch them. Unalakleet. And I think a lot of times they just shorten it to Unalakleet.
Yep.
Unalakleet.
I don't know why. Yeah.
Which was 100 miles.
What was that show in the Discovery Channel about the...
Yeah, it was like Flying Wild Alaska, I think.
Yeah.
That's how I know all the names.
With the Tweedo girls, I think that's what they were called.
Yes.
Which we met at what was it called? The show up in Wisconsin.
Oshkosh?
We went, Oshkosh.
Oh, you met them up in Oshkosh?
Yep, with Fred and Tyler. We met Ariel. Oh, she's pretty cool.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So anyway, these guys basically, said, no, don't do that. We highly recommend that you continue to your alternate and land there, because otherwise you're probably going to run out of fuel and die. And so they finally, convinced him, and they did. And everybody lived to see another day. So congratulations to the air traffic controllers there in Anchorage, Ron Sparks and Mike Thomas. Excellent job. And they were awarded with their good deed by, receiving some awards. I don't know what do they call that award, but the National Air Traffic Controllers Association gave them an award at their convention in Las Vegas. So there you go. Just wanted to mention that. And it's not the first time that air traffic controllers have saved the bacon for pilot.
Mhm.
Absolutely. You guys out in ATC land do a great job, and our lives, depend on you many, many times. So
We were
thank you
just
so
talking
much
about that hypoxia incident where they talked those guys down from Coletta, in the Learjet.
Exactly right. That's what comes to mind.
And then the other one, a couple of years ago, that in Jacksonville, that VFR pilot who got caught in IFR talked him down from that. That was amazing.
Yeah,
So,
that, and there's this lady who was up in a flight twin with her husband. Her husband passed away. We
Passed away.
we
Yep.
talked about it on the podcast a couple of years ago, and she actually got the plane down with the help of ATC. So ATC guys and gals, you guys rock.
yes, you do.
Strong work.
Thank you for all you do. And now, the best part of the show. Let me do that again.
Captain.
Turn up the volume a little bit.
Captain. Incoming message.
Are we all still here?
Still here.
Yes,
Good.
we are.
Yes.
Okay.
Present.
Let's start with Matt. And let's see, he starts with, you mentioned a while back, I think he's talking to Rick, that you have taken a trip to pick up a brand spanking new 777 up here at KPAE. That's Painfield in
Yes.
Washington State. You even said you got to take the film off the screens. Next time you get to do that, let me know, and I'll be happy to peel some of that stuff off. I've never even had the opportunity to do that in a car, much less a big ash Boeing. Besides, I live about 5 minutes from there. Thanks, guys. This is from Matt, the anti-curmudgeon.
The anti-curmudgeon. Nice.
Nice.
So, Rick, or
Yes, sir.
or myself, if we're ever up there picking up a brand new jet and peeling the plastic off the screens, we'll have to give Matt a call.
And it was interesting because I wasn't supposed to go on that trip, and the FO that was supposed to go on that had to call in sick, and that he was sick because no one in their right mind would say that I'm sick to turn down a trip to Seattle to go pick up a brand new jet. So, and I was on call that day, so it just so happened that I was the next guy in line, and there I went, and it was a great experience.
I love Seattle. It's a great city.
Yeah.
I love the Pacific Northwest. All right. Well, let's move on. And this is from Michael Sullivan. He says, how Boeing named their 700 series jets. And we had a discussion about this a few episodes back, episode 207 to be exact. And we were wondering exactly why Boeing, called their jets, their current series of jets, 7 blank 7.
Mhm.
So this article goes on, if you're traveling aboard a U.S. carrier, the odds are pretty good that your flight will be aboard something that begins with the number 7. The differences between Boeing's fleet, a new iteration of a 737, an enormous 747-8, or a futuristic 777 Dreamliner. Wait, that's not right. 787 Dreamliner, I should say.
Mhm.
Quite dramatic, even as their names remain awfully similar. But what do all of those 7s mean anyway? Common myths and misconceptions about Boeing's iconic numeric names include the original 707, either drawing its name from the sign of the wing sweep's angle or just plain old affinity for lucky number 7. Both of these theories are wrong, though. Boeing's jets don't actually even possess that particular wing sweep angle. The true reason can't be wrapped.
Well, the 707 had 35 degrees. The 747 has 37.5. But if you go back to wing sweep, that's true. It doesn't, at least the 707.
What is the sign of that angle?
Hmm?
What is the sign?
Oh, the sign of that angle? I have to pull out the old trusty,
Get the
abacus
friggin'
over here.
Calculator out. That's apparently what people thought, that's what that 7 meant. Anyway, Boeing's jets don't actually even possess that. Okay, wait. The true reason can't be wrapped up in such a perfect little answer. It requires a look back at Boeing's past. The company didn't always produce 7 blank 7 vehicles. Early Boeing products had names like the Model 40, Model 80, Model 247, and eventually the Model 307 Stratoliner and the Model 377, although there are a lot of 7s in there. Its military offerings were designated by the letter B at the start of their name, like in the case of the B-17, another 7, and B-52. I'm not helping. But in the aftermath of World War II, Boeing President William Allen set about an ambitious restructuring of the company, dividing each new department by 3-digit numbers. The 300 and 400 departments continued to focus on the company's propeller aircraft offerings, while 500 came to denote the part of the company focused on turbine engine development. The 600s were reserved for rocket and missile products. And finally, the burgeoning jet transport aircraft division of the company was assigned the number 700. As the company prepared its Model 700 jet for commercial sales, Boeing's marketing department swept in and rightfully suggested that the name didn't exactly roll off the tongue. Instead, the 700 was rechristened the alliterative 707. The 717 followed the pattern, not the present 717, with subsequent decades bringing with them the 727, 737, 747, and so on, up to today's 787 Dreamliner. The humble origin story may lack the zip and punch of some of the myths out there, but the truth of the matter is less important than the fact that a singular marketing suggestion resulted in one of the world's most recognizable brands of all time. And there you have it. Probably written by a marketing executive.
But that's exactly what I just read in this in this book I finished by Joe Sutter, the guy that was behind the 747 project, and he worked on on everything from the Strato cruiser all the way up to the 747 and on and beyond. And that's the explanation that he gives exactly what it's on here. This Model 700 was for commercial jets.
Joe would know.
Mm-hmm.
He would.
He's the man.
Joe is the man.
Yes. Okay. Swedish Andreas sent in, we talked about this on the last episode, Rick, some screenshots of some military and GA traffic, kind of mixing it up. And he sent in some clarification of that because we were kind of scratching our heads a little bit, not sure exactly what to think of it. He said the airplane in question is a Saab 105, the military name SK-60. The SK stands for schooling. The picture in the app is a generic military plane. Anyway, he sent some links to a Wikipedia article about the Saab 105 and also a YouTube link to a Swedish Air Force SK-60 live fire exercise. I watched that YouTube video and I'm thinking, wow, I don't know if I would be very comfortable with flying up there with people with live rockets and them firing those things. Seems like somebody might get hurt. Anyway, so thank you, Swedish, for kind of clarifying that, Swedish Andreas. And he also sent us some audio feedback. So let me go over here to the iPad version and play Swedish Andreas's audio feedback. I'm delaying. Can you tell?
Vamping?
Nope.
A little vamping there.
Can't tell.
Okay, here we go.
Hi there, Captain Jeff and crew. This is Swedish Andreas speaking. I just wanted to say that I was helping a friend of my father's. He sells gliders. He sells discus gliders in Europe and in Canada. And I was helping him with some logos, and I had to go to Schemperth Flugsug's homepage. And there I saw that they now sell their gliders with a kit for people that are disabled, so you can fly your glider with you can control your rudder with a stick instead. So I was very happy to see that. I will send a link to that. And I also have a question. The other day I was listening to the last episode of the latest episode of not the last episode, the latest episode of Airline Pilot Guy, and there was a guy there asking how fast you can get into the airplane, get it going and flying away if in an emergency. And my question is the other way around. First off, do you guys train evacuations from the cockpit? Like I know the flight attendants train for evacuations with the passengers and themselves, but do you guys train that ever? How to get out of the airplane fast? And Also, how fast do you think you could get out of an airplane? I mean, Rick, if all the LiPo batteries I ordered for my RC planes caught on fire on the back, how fast could you get out before out of the airplane? I guess that pilot and Jeff, you guys are captains with passengers, so I guess you guys are smoked because you have to stay with the sinking ship, right? That's the captain's lot in life. Well, that's it. Thank you and goodbye.
I knew that somebody asked a question about getting out of cockpits, and it was right away. Thank you,
There you
Swedish.
go.
So I can tell you that I've never gone through an exercise of actually, exiting the cockpit through the cockpit window with the rope. And have you ever done that, Rick?
No. I believe that for insurance purposes, we're not allowed in a training type scenario. That's one thing. The other thing is that if something happens to a pilot, then you're all of a sudden you're one pilot less available in the roster. So we know how to do it, I guess, and it's depicted on the windowsill there. In my aircraft, you have 6 cockpit windows. You have L1, L2, L3, and then R1, R2, and 3, and then the window that actually opens is the L2 window and the R2 window. So basically, you unlock them, you slide them back, and then there's this compartment right above that window there, and there's this bag in there that's got a rope, and you basically throw the rope, and it's got to be thrown in a certain way so that the rope goes all the way to the ground. And as I was going to say, right on the windowsill there's kind of like a schematic of how the rope should look and what the exit procedure is. So basically the way you go is, you go leg, torso, leg, and then you don't slide down, but you grab onto these knots that are on this rope here, and you basically grab onto those and bring yourself down slowly. You don't want to slide down the rope because otherwise you'll burn your hands and you'll end up, hurting yourself even more because you won't be able to support your own weight. And I don't know how high off the ground that window is on a 777, but at least 2 stories up there. So you want to make sure, that if you're going to be coming down using the rope, you are sure-footed and you grab on tight and you come down slowly, because if you fall, you can really hurt yourself. Now, Captain Jeff's plane, the flight deck sits a little lower. I don't know exactly how tall
Maybe 12 to 15 feet, at the most.
Yeah.
I would imagine. Probably not even that.
Yeah, but you could still hurt yourself if you didn't do.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure-footed. Still quite a
broken
ways off the ground.
broken ankle or broken arms, a broken bone, so
Exactly.
But again, to answer your question, no, we do not practice that in any type of training scenario. We know how to do it. We watch videos on it, and we read about it quite a bit on our yearly emergencies training, which we do every year because it's yearly, but we never actually do it. No. However, we do jump. We do use when we do practice how to arm and deploy the slide raft and jump down the slide raft. We do that every year as part of our training recertification. But that's it as far as evacuation training is concerned. That's all we do.
We did that like our initial training, but we don't do it every year.
Oh, you don't? Really?
I was kind of picturing when you were describing the diagram that you have, that's like the one that passengers have in the back in case of emergency. Is that what it looks like with the little cartoons? That's totally what I was picturing when you were describing what it shows.
It's like it's the same guy from the IKEA directions.
Excellent.
That's him.
So the comment he made about captains having to stay with the jet, I noticed that Rick kind of was shaking his head no. So what do you want to say about that?
No, I mean, what you do is obviously you want to make sure that everybody's off the jet and everybody has evacuated before you set foot off your aircraft, because obviously you're the captain, you're the last one off the ship. But that doesn't mean that you have to go down with the ship. just basically make sure everybody's clear and then, get off the aircraft.
And guess what? If you might be in a situation where somebody is threatening to hijack an airplane, let's say, and you're on the ground, and if the pilots leave through the cockpit windows, the hijacker is not going to get very far with that airplane. So that could be another possible scenario.
Well, that's true. I mean, because you take the keys of the ignition and you just take them with you. So
that's right. Don't forget the keys. It's a big mistake a lot of us make. All right. Good feedback, Swedish Andreas. Hopefully we answered all your questions. Now, speaking of questions, Taj sent a audio feedback with a bunch of questions. Let's hear what he has to say.
Hey guys, Captain Jeff, Miami Rick, and Dr. Steph, and hopefully Captain Nick Stage here, the first officer from Brazil. I'd like to thank you for playing my feedback and congratulate you on a great show. My first question today, today I have a few questions, and they're all directed to Miami Rick because they're all about the 777. Last week I watched a show about the Asiana crash at San Francisco, and a few questions came up when I saw the show. And also I read the report, and I still couldn't really understand how certain things work on 777. If you could please, Miami Rick, describe how do you fly a localizer-only procedure on the 777, that would be really great. Just as an example, on the type that I fly, which is the Embraer, if we're flying a localizer procedure, we have to use the lateral mode as heading to intercept the lock. And once we are in the intercept course, we arm nav. We don't arm the approach. And that is because if we arm the approach, the airplane will try to capture the lock and the glide. And if we're flying heading and we arm nav, the airplane will understand that you want to capture a lock only. Is that how it works on the 777? Another thing that I noticed that they use flight level change as the vertical mode. And that was when they were on the final. We're not allowed to use that on the Embraer because if we use flight level change on final, basically flight level change on the Embraer brings the throttle to idle and tries to capture the speed by elevator inputs. And you don't want to have your throttles on idle on final. And especially beyond the final approach fix, we can't use that. Another thing, and that's the last one, is how they turn off how they switch off the auto throttle. It looked like they didn't want to do it. They didn't switch it off deliberately. It seemed like it was switched off by bringing the throttle to idle. Is that how it works? Could you explain that for us? That would be really good. And that's all. The last thing I would like to tell Captain Jeff to please keep Captain Nick on the show. He's great. It's very good listening to him. He's very funny. I know he doesn't mean to be funny, but his accent is very funny. I know my accent is funny too, but nothing beats a British accent. Thanks a lot for the great show, and I hope to hear all my answers in the future. Cheers. Bye.
Well, Taj, first of all, thank you for your audio feedback and your questions. And probably this is the best time to say that Captain Nick won't be coming back because he just didn't cut the mustard for us. No, I'm just kidding. He's not able to join us today because he's flying and doing his job. We love Captain Nick. He's a great addition to the show, and we love his accent too. And he is a funny guy.
Great guy.
So, Rick,
guy.
How do you fly the localizer approach on
the localizer Pro? Oh, we got the echo button on.
Let's try that.
The localizer approach, then. That's a good question. So, for those of you guys and gals out in podcast land who don't know what a localizer approach is, the localizer is the horizontal guidance provided to you by the instrument landing system, and that horizontal guidance is what's going to tell you where the runway center line is. Now, oftentimes, the glide slope part of the instrument landing system, which is the part that's going to give you the vertical guidance or the correct angle down to the touchdown zone, is going to be out of service or not working. And so the localizer works, but the glide slope doesn't. So in that case, you shoot what's called a localizer only approach. And that's what Taj is talking about here. Now, there's two ways to fly a localizer approach. In olden times, you would maintain a certain altitude up until you got to your final approach fix. And then from that point, you would get down to your MDA or your minimum descent altitude using either manual flying or a mode of the autopilot called vertical speed. So you would get to your final approach fix, vertical speed down to MDA, and stay at MDA until you got to your missed approach point. And if at your missed approach point you saw the runway, then you completed and landed. If you did, then you went around. On the 777, the way the localizer approach is flown, is you're basically going to hold your last cleared altitude, right? And well, let's back up a little bit. Let's say you're on your final vector to the localizer. So you're flying under ATC vectoring, and they vector you to the localizer. Let's say you're landing on runway 9. Your last vector is a heading of 060. So you turn to 060, and then you arm the localizer portion of the autopilot. In the 777 and the Boeings that I've flown, you can track either the localizer alone or the localizer and glide slope. The localizer alone, you track it with the LOC or LOC button, and the localizer and glide slope, you track them together with the APP or approach button. Now, in this case, we're talking only about a localizer approach. So you would arm the localizer, and then when the aircraft senses that it's within 2.5 miles of that localizer track, the lateral mode is going to go from heading to localizer, and the aircraft is going to bank to start tracking that localizer. That localizer is going to swing in to the center of your course deviation indicator, and the aircraft's going to nicely start tracking that localizer all the way down to the runway. Now we got the lateral aspect of the approach taken care of. Now let's talk about the vertical portion of it. The way we would track that correct flight path down to the runway is with what's called the VNAV portion of the autopilot. Now, before you are able to track that FMC generated glide path down to the runway, you have to make sure that that angle is actually coded in your legs page. So you're going to go look down at your box, at your control display unit, the FMC down there, and you're going to look at your final approach fix there. And in between your final approach fix there and your missed approach fix, there should be an angle coded there, very close to 3 degrees, which is what a glide slope is. So you arm VNAV, and then once you are close to or near the capture altitude of where that path intercepts your cleared altitude, then that VNAV alt is going to change into VNAV path, right? And VNAV path means that you're now following the path that is listed the path that is listed on your legs page of your control display unit. The important part here is making sure that once you are 300 feet below your missed approach altitude, you reset your mode control panel altitude knob to your missed approach height. Because initially, to begin that descent, you have to set your MDA, your minimum descent altitude, on your altitude window there. Otherwise, the aircraft will not descend, even though you're on VNAV. So, you are flying on altitude hold level at 2,000 feet or 3,000 feet or whatever your altitude is. You have your MDA set on your altitude window, and then the vertical path is captured. The aircraft's going to start coming down. And let's say your missed approach altitude is 2,000 feet. When you cross 1,700 feet, that's the time to go ahead and set your missed approach altitude of 2,000 feet on your altitude window there. And just continue flying on localizer and on VNAV. And the amazing thing is that these things are so spot on that you really, to the untrained eye, you really can't tell the difference. A VNAV, a localizer approach using VNAV is just as accurate as an ILS approach, even though the minimums for a localizer approach using VNAV are going to be higher, because technically you are flying a non-precision approach. So that's how you fly a localizer approach on the 777. Your other question was about flight level change, and that is correct. Flight level change, or open climb, or open descent, which is what the Airbus drivers call it, or I think the Mad Dog drivers call it clamp mode. It's basically going to be a mode of the autopilot, automatic flight director system, which is going to request a climb or a descent based on a speed. So if I'm flying at 5,000 feet and 220 knots, and I want to descend down to 2,000 feet, and I select flight level change, the throttles are going to go down to idle, and the way that I'm going to control my rate of descent is with my speed. Because, yes, you say that the descent rate is controlled with your elevator. Yes, but more so, I guess, to go a step further, I'd say it's controlled with your speed. If you want to go down faster, you increase your speed. If you want to go down slower, then you decrease your speed, because the aircraft is going to pitch for that speed to give you the type of descent rate that you want based on the selected speed. Now, many airlines, mine included, have provisions in the the flight operating handbook and the operations manual, which say that below 5,000 feet, you should not enter descents of more than 1,500 feet a minute. Because remember, you're very, very close to the ground. And so you have to be careful not to exceed that because of, closure rate with terrain, ground proximity warning system events, and all that data being recorded in your FOQA computers, your flight operation quality assurance computers, and all that stuff. So basically, that's how flight level change works. And then the problem with flight level change in that particular incident was that these guys were flying a non-precision approach in vertical speed. They were getting high on the glide slope, and the pilot monitoring had changed the missed approach altitude to 3,000 feet or whatever the missed approach altitude was, because they were 300 feet below what the published missed approach altitude was. The problem is that the pilot who was flying the aircraft on autopilot, beats me why, he wanted to descend faster. And so the way to descend faster is, yes, using flight level change, even though it's not the right way to do it. But what he didn't notice is that the target altitude had been changed to 3,000 feet. So by selecting 3,000 feet, he in fact requested the aircraft to climb, which left him even higher on the descent profile. And that's when he disconnected the autopilot and brought the aircraft down, bringing the throttles to idle, which brings me to your other question. It's not that he disconnected the auto throttle. It's just that when you're flying the aircraft on flight level change mode and you bring the auto throttles back to idle, remembering that the flight level change mode of the autopilot is a mode that requests a descent based on speed. When you bring the throttles back to idle, you are engaged in what's called the throttle hold mode. And throttle hold basically means that the auto throttle is connected, yes, but the servos that connect the throttles physically to the auto throttle system are disconnected, right? So you can basically set the throttles manually anywhere you want. Okay. But since the guy was descending and he wanted to get down fast with the throttles at idle, the throttles themselves didn't need to be brought forward because he wasn't looking for speed. He was looking for descent rate, for sink rate. And that's why the throttles didn't go up. And that's why at the end of the day, he got so low that he got in the regime where the throttles do not wake back up because the system assumes you're going to land, and the throttles just don't wake up. And that's, what happened at the end of the day. So that's what I have for your questions. I hope that I answered them. And if you have anything else, you know where to turn. I'm happy to always help you out.
Excellent. Thank you, Rick, for covering all that. You did a fantastic job.
I try.
And we have some audio feedback. I don't know who this is from. Let's see.
This is Miami Hick. I was calling to tell you about my experience flying a cargo plane. I work for this new company, FedEx and UPS. They merged, started a new company called Fed Up. We was taking a load of pigs and flowers down to somewhere in South America, I don't know. And I woke up from a nap, see the cockpit full of smoke. Just when I was about to call Mayday on the radio, I looked over and it was just my co-pilot smoking a cigarette. So I got kind of shook up after that. I told him, I said, I need a drink. So I went to the back and mixed us up a couple of martinis, get us through the rest of the flight. We got down there to South America. All them pigs had done ate all the flowers. Apparently the loadmaster had forgot to separate the pigs and the flowers. So instead of pigs and flowers, we ended up with a bunch of pigs and a load of smelly stuff. So that was my experience. Scary in the cockpit there with the smoke. So I just want to tell you, this is Miami Hick, and until I see you again, keep your shoes on your feet and your hat on your head. Over and out.
Some solid advice there.
That's
Thank you,
great
Miami
advice.
Hick.
I wonder if Miami Hick knows Captain Jerry.
I think they are friends.
Are they friends?
They might, or
I'm
maybe
sure.
They went to flight. They went to flight school together.
They might
Dingus
have-
and Eugene as well. I hope you heard that. Did you hear that, Rick? The Eugene and yeah, that was good. Our APG fact checkers.
The fact checkers, absolutely.
They're listening right now. I can guarantee it, and they're checking all the facts.
Well, how do you think I got all that stuff on the auto throttle? That's all them.
You had to double check everything, make sure
They're
that
supplying all your information.
Yeah.
Thank you, Miami Hick, for that. Let's see here. Continuing on with Ross in England. He says, I wanted to ask about blown tires. I've been an avid Aviation Herald reader for a few years now and have noticed there are issues with blown tires cropping up every now and again. My questions are, why can it happen on departure? Is it common, and has it ever happened to you? And what is the impact, and how do you handle the aircraft as a result? When you have to land right. Okay, so I guess what he's saying here is if you have a blown tire, you have to land, right? Finally, I assume that the impact to Nick/Rick of a blown tire is less than an impact to Jeff or Steph's aircraft, simply because of the difference in landing gear size. Is that right? Please, or P.S., your main man, Micah, asked about iPhone apps. Simon's Av Herald app is one I would recommend. I agree with that. It's a handy app, and buying it is a good way to support his efforts. I agree as well. So go over to the AV Herald and look on one of the sidebars and buy his app. And that helps support the Aviation Herald, for which we have a lot of news that we gather from his site. So blown tires, Rick, why can it happen on departure?
Well, I mean, you're talking about, aircraft ground speeds getting very, very close to tire. Well, not very close, but near tire failure, rotational speed there. And these tires, one interesting fact about these tires is the fact that the tires are rated to miles per hour, not knots. And the tires on my aircraft are rated to 235 miles an hour. And if you get to that speed or faster, there's a possibility that the tires, if they're not structurally sound, they could fail. The problem with failing tires and tires going that fast is that all that rubber being spewed outward can really cause some damage, as was seen when the Concorde went down. Remember how that rubber punctured the fuel tank there, setting off that chain of events that eventually brought the aircraft down. So making sure that your tires are on point is a very, very important part of your pre-flight walk-around, because a tire failing at high speed is no joke. I've never actually had that happen to me. Yes, going back to what you said, the impact of a tire blowing up on an aircraft such as mine or an aircraft such as Nick's would be, I guess the impact would be lower on our type operation because, my aircraft, the 777 has 6 tires per bogey, so 12 tires in back. And so that weight is very, very well distributed. And so the failure of one might not necessarily mean that, the other tires wouldn't be able to handle the weight. But still, you don't want it to get to that point. We have a system on the flight deck called the Tire Pressure Monitoring System, the TPMS, which is going to tell you what the tire pressure is and the brake temperature as well. And so when that pressure starts going down a little bit, and it's expected, you expect to see the tire pressure go down in flight because remember, these things are inflated with nitrogen. It's an inert gas because the reason why they're inflated with nitrogen is because obviously nitrogen doesn't have any oxygen in it for fire purposes. And the fact that the air temperature actually goes down when you go up at altitude causes that gas to contract and the pressure in the tire to go down. And so there is a range of temperature where those tires need to be. Now, when the tires get below that, then you obviously get an advisory up in the flight deck letting you know that tire is a little bit low on pressure. Conversely, when you do have, for example, a rejected takeoff type scenario where you have to slam on the brakes and get the aircraft stopped on the available runway after an engine failure or any kind of failure on your takeoff run, those brakes are going to get very, very hot, and that nitrogen is going to expand, and there needs to be some kind of system to prevent those tires from blowing up. And there is there's a little port there called a fusible plug, which is basically a plug that is made out of a metal that is going to melt at a lower temperature than it would take the brakes to get to before the tires burst. And so that plug is going to melt, letting that nitrogen out and preventing the tires from blowing up. And once again, keeping you from having, rubber and fire and nitrogen from, spewing everywhere. That's what I got on that. What do you have to add there, Captain Jeff?
Blown tires on departure are something that happens, occasionally. At my airline and on my airplane, basically that's one of those things that if it happens during your takeoff roll, we do not abort for that. Even though I've never experienced it myself, I've heard that it can really make a lot of noise and give you a lot of vibration and a lot of concern whether or not the airplane is going to fly. And it's really hard to overcome the urge to abort the takeoff. And we've had several instances at my airline where aborts have occurred because of blown tires. And in every instance, they said, that was probably not the right thing to do, that you should have continued the takeoff with the blown tire, even with the vibration and everything else, because it was a safer thing to continue the takeoff, come back around, do your checklists, maybe burn off some fuel, lighten up the airplane and land with the tire deflated. And I'm not sure I would say that it's a less of a big deal for the heavies with the bogies and the multiple tires, because blown tires can really cause a lot of havoc to the pieces of the tire that might shred and impact critical control surfaces and that kind of thing. So regardless of how many tires you have out there, it still can be a big deal. But knock on wood, I've not had one fail on me on a takeoff roll. But we do this in the simulator, just to see what you're going to do if you have a blown tire and you have directional control issues sometimes, and it usually makes a very large or loud noise. It gets your attention. And as I said, it's hard to resist not, pulling the throttles back and stopping the airplane. And that may be the most dangerous thing you can do in that scenario. But,
well, right, because the effectiveness of brakes on a blown tire is not the same as the effectiveness of brakes on a good tire.
And another reason why another reason
better
why
to
a
just
tire
keep on
may
going.
fail, not only to the high speeds that you might be enduring or that might be occurring on your takeoff roll, but this was a big deal for us in the L1011 taking off out of Honolulu. We'd have to go out to the what they call the reef runway, which was a couple miles away. It was the parallel runway kind of way out into the water. They built up that area for the runway for noise abatement and that kind of thing. And by the time you taxied your very, very heavy airplane out there, all the friction, even if you weren't even using the brakes, the friction of the tires rolling on the taxiway surfaces and everything else builds up all kinds of heat. And we had to be very careful about our taxi speeds and watching our temperatures of our brakes and everything else by the time. And even if you never touch the brakes, you still, you get a lot of heat buildup. And it was not uncommon for a tire to fail on the takeoff roll on that reef runway in Honolulu. So,
absolutely. The smart guys and gals over at Boeing who came up with the 777 thought about that. And there's a system on there where while you're taxiing, below 25 knots ground speed, every time you press on the brakes, only 4 sets of wheels will brake, and the other axle will not, and that's sequenced. So every time you press on the brakes, only 4 sets of wheels brake, and 1 is not braking, and then that way you keep that heat from building up. Because as Captain Jeff said, that's one thing, the tires failing on takeoff. And then hot brakes are not that effective. That's the reason why, if you notice, a lot of these smaller type airplanes, when they land on very, very long runways, they all engage reverse thrust. And it's not because they were going to run out of runway. It's because by engaging reverse thrust and slowing down the aircraft with reverse thrust, you're actually not using the wheel brakes as much and trying to keep that wheel brake temperature down so that you have your brakes cool come time to take back off again. So that's kind of how that works.
And I was just going to add. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Steph.
Oh, I was just going to add one thing. Because he was asking about the impact on even smaller aircraft like the ones that I fly. I've never had a blown tire on takeoff or anything like that. And it's only happened one time where I've actually had a flat tire, and I've probably told this story before, so apologies if I have. But I was flying with a friend, and we were departing out of Raleigh, Durham, and so we left the general aviation ramp, which is all the way at. We were going down to 5 right, so to get down there, you have to taxi the entire length of that runway on the taxiway. And we had done our pre-flight, everything looked fine. We got down there, and we had to hold short of the runway for a little while, waiting on some landing traffic. And when we got cleared to go, I let off the brakes, gave it a little power, and the plane went nowhere. And I looked at my friend with me. I said, are you on the brakes? What's going on here? And we're kind of like looking around, looking at the parking brake, trying to figure out what's going on. Turns out our nose gear tire was flat, and that's why we couldn't move anywhere very easily. But we were thinking about it afterwards, like, wow, it was probably a good thing that happened there and not at some point, it didn't go flat at some point after we took off, because we would really have no way of knowing that until we landed. So that's just something to add there.
Yeah. And that reminded me of a story of a C5 incident. I tried to look it up on the web while you guys were talking, but I couldn't find it. But there was an incident years and years and years ago where a C5 was taxiing out, and there was a lot of fog. Sometimes you can actually blow away the fog by running up your engines and kind of burning off the fog. And so they thought they would be clever and go up and down the runway a couple of times to burn the fog off so that they have enough visibility to take off. And the last time they did that, they built up so much energy and so much heat in the tires that the tires caught on fire.
That was a if I remember correctly, and I think I am, it was a Swiss Air Caravelle in Switzerland.
Oh, it wasn't a C5. Okay.
No. Yeah. And they were taxiing down the runway with the brakes on. And they thought it was a great idea to do that. And then, they got back to the takeoff portion of the runway, put the power on, took off, and then they brought the landing gear up, and the brakes were on, tires were on fire. And what does the landing gear break? What did the landing gear retract into? Right underneath the fuel tank. And the rest is history.
That's not good. No wonder I couldn't find that in my Google search for C5.
There's a tire.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Rick. That's why we have Rick, the Wikipedia. Right. Thank you for that. And you know what? It might just be time now for our latest installment of Captain Nick, the old curmudgeon, his plain tales. This week it's an engineer story. You can't hear that because I'm playing it on the wrong thing. So let me go over here to my iPad and find the correct folder. And now I'm going to tap this. And we're going to wait while it downloads. You know what we're going to do? No, we can do this. Sorry. I can turn up the echo button and we can listen to Captain Nick.
The old pilot's plain tales. An engineer's story. The days of floating lazily across the vast continent of Africa in a luxurious flying boat, dining on the finest foods and stopping nightly at exotic outposts seems quite idyllic to us now. It was the 30s when such air travel was at its peak. And the old pilot's plain tales, with its flagship an engineer's story, the Empire C-class flying boats. The days of floating lazily. Those roomy aircraft with 2 passenger decks. Yes, the 747 wasn't.
Okay, let's try this again.
Carried a crew of 5.
I guess the iPad finally caught up with me. Sorry. Okay, let me go back to... Stop talking, Nick. Nick, I don't want to hear about this anymore.
He just doesn't know when to quit.
My equipment is just going out of control here. I'm sorry. Why are you playing? There's nothing playing on my iPad. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Now we're going to go back to this. See, when you hear that, if you're listening to the audio podcast, you won't hear any of this. It'll be all perfect.
Oh.
Okay, here we go. Let's try this one more time.
The old pilot's plain tales. An engineer's story. The days of floating lazily across the vast continent of Africa in a luxurious flying boat, dining on the finest foods and stopping nightly at exotic outposts seems quite idyllic to us now. It was the 30s when such air travel was at its peak, and nobody did it better than Imperial Airways, with its flagship aircraft, the Empire C-class flying boats. Those roomy aircraft with 2 passenger decks, yes, the 747 wasn't the first, carried a crew of 5 and around 20 passengers very comfortably. It featured promenade decks, smoking rooms, and sleeping quarters. A steward served 3 meals a day, with the menu featuring such delicacies as fresh grapefruit, omelettes and bacon, rolls and marmalade for breakfast, ice melon, roast chicken, tomatoes and asparagus tips for lunch, and pâté de foie gras, princess roast pheasant, and watercress, followed by peach melba with golden figs for dinner. With the cost of such journeys being high, they were restricted to an elite, but such travel wasn't without risk. Between Uganda and the Sudan, the Nile flows through a region known as the Sud, a vast swamp of clogging papyrus, endless and undifferentiated. It was here that the Imperial Airways flying boat Corsair came down. The Corsair was about halfway through its return journey from Cape Town to Britain, between Kisumu on the shores of Lake Victoria in Kenya and Juba in the Sudan on the White Nile. Navigation in those days was more akin to being on a ship than in an aircraft. Most of the time it was pure dead reckoning, flying a compass course for a set time. The navigator would take visual fixes by day or star shots at night. However, from only a few thousand feet, much of the remote African wilderness looked similar, and on this day any distinguishing features were concealed by morning fog. So the crew relied on a vital piece of equipment, the direction finder. A circular rotating aerial, it could be pointed at a radio source and turned to the point of maximum signal, giving a bearing to that station. Unfortunately for Captain Edward Sampson Alcock, the brother of the famed Sir John William Alcock, who had made the world's first successful transatlantic crossing, his navigator's direction finder was faulty. Incorrect maintenance had resulted in a poorly wired reversing switch, causing the DF loop to sense wrongly. The navigator was hopelessly lost. It was 10 a.m. on the 14th of March, 1939. With only 15 minutes of fuel remaining, Captain Alcock spotted a line of water through a gap in the fog. A quick orbit revealed a small river, and it looked enough to land on, but anyway, he was running out of options. With barely enough room between the banks to fit his aircraft, Alcock put it down, a skillful achievement that was almost completely successful. Unfortunately, hidden rocks beneath the surface ripped a 26-foot gash in the hull, and the port float was damaged. They held the boat up against the shore with the engines to get everyone safely off, but then she slid gently back and sank, almost up to her motors. But at least the crew and passengers were safe. Having been advised of the aircraft situation by HF radio, a search was instituted using an RAF Wellesley, and the Corsair was found. Already the passengers and crew had been rescued by the Belgian resident officer and driven to Abba, where they were picked up by the flying boat Centurion and flown home. Here, you think, our story finishes. But far from it. The makers of the Corsair, Short Brothers, were much too busy with war work to build a replacement. Working out Stirling bombers and Sunderland flying boats for the Royal Air Force and had no time to spare, so Imperial decided that the aircraft must be repaired. That decision started a remarkable tale of endeavour and achievement when a small group of engineers set off to find and fix the flying boat. A man called Hugh Gordon led the team, and he was starting a 10-month effort to get the aircraft airborne again. It was actually on the River Dungu, near a small town of Faraday, which in the 30s hardly featured on a map. They laboured for months to haul the giant flying boat ashore, patch up her hull and refloat her. Gordon organised hundreds of locals and labourers and drilled every single rivet hole by hand. The engineers had to lighten the aircraft by removing all the engines and cabin furnishings to get her light enough to move. She was jacked from under one wing from the bank, and a raft of oil drums was used to raise the other side. This all sounds quite straightforward, but the work was done in equatorial Africa on a remote riverbank. No heat-treating furnaces, no power riveters, no winches and hoists, and the only protection from the sun and rain was the aircraft's wing. Troubled by sickness and disease, sleeping each night at Abba, it was a 40-mile drive to work every morning down a road they had to build themselves. They dined on snake sandwiches and worse, until the local American missionary took them under his wing. The local tribesmen would surely have stories that travelled far and wide. Split pins found their way into nose art. Dural rivets became earrings, and all-clad became bracelets. One Askari who mounted guard every night with his old muzzle-loader was particularly proud of his rumbled overcoat. Gordon remembered a local official being carried through the town on a sedan chair, followed by his African mistress, who carried a tin kettle and was completely naked, except for a trilby hat. Back in Britain, Captain Alcott reported to his chief pilot, only to be told, "You put it down there, now it's fixed, you go and get it back." This may not have been the best of ideas. Alcott travelled back south to the site, which was now almost large enough to be a village in its own right, only to hit another rock on his takeoff attempt. The river had been low, and although markers were in place to show the rocks, when the engines were opened up, one side responded faster than the other, causing the aircraft to drift, and when the nose came up, Alcott lost sight of the markers. A float struck a boulder and the aircraft slewed into the rocky bank, coming to rest on the side before slipping off again and sinking into deeper water. I often wonder if, despite the respect that captains were held in those days, Gordon and his engineering team didn't have some sharp words to say to Woolcock. With more equipment available and with the addition of 75 convicts, this time it only took 3 days to beach the huge machine. With a tenacity that I can only admire, the work began again. This time, Captain Kelly Rogers was given the task of retrieving the flying boat. He had been practicing short takeoff techniques back in Britain and could get airborne in only 125 yards. However, to get the required run, the river had to be dammed. An elaborate barrage 10 feet high was built, and at a time of the year when water levels were falling, they managed to get sufficient depth under the keel. To just say they built a barrage is too simple by far. They needed stone, and for that they had to start a quarry. They felled trees and fashioned a hard clay compound to render the construction waterproof. Captain Kelly Rogers had been practicing his takeoff techniques in another aircraft at Farage, which at 2,600 feet altitude was similar to that of the River Dungu, and he thought he had enough room. With the aircraft stripped and only himself, his co-pilot and radio operator, plus an anchorman in the stern on board, he made his attempt. The safe stream was only 50 yards across, and it wasn't going to be easy to keep within those fine limits. He accelerated the huge machine, came up onto the step, and lifted off to an enormous cheer from the assembled crowd. The Corsair only had enough fuel to make Juba, where it landed again to take on more. It was then positioned to Alexandria, where it was given a complete overhaul before being put back into service. This is a story not of piloting skills, although that was at times vital, but of fine old-school engineering. Gordon and his men did more than just repair an aircraft. They recruited and trained hundreds of local men to assist them. Using little more than their own wits, they fashioned tools, they built a road, they built a dam, they built a small town, and they fixed a flying boat in the middle of an African jungle, only to see their efforts dashed. Whereupon they buckled down and did it all again. I bow to these fine men, their remarkable story, and those who follow in their tradition.
Another fine job by Captain Nick. Interesting story.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing something like that happening in this day and age, with that amount of manpower and, basically building the dam and all of that stuff, the quarry and knocking down trees, and doing it twice. I think that's where the line would actually be drawn. The first time, maybe. The second time, the boat sank.
They'll probably say, okay, well, we gave it a good try, but that's enough. Let's just say it's crap and not worry about it anymore. And they continue to fly the airplane after that too. That's amazing.
Plus, it's not in the collective bargaining agreement to do that in the first place. So
there you go.
Right.
Not in the contract.
That's true. I'll tell you, things, attitudes have definitely changed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing that a lot in our newer generation pilots. The attitude is just different, and it's a little dismaying, actually.
Mm-hmm.
How's the bandwidth from my end? Did it suffer a bit? It looked like everything was freezing up a little bit. Just wanted to make sure everybody could still hear the audio.
No, the audio was fine.
Oh, it was fine. Yep.
Okay.
I didn't notice anything.
Okay, because I'm on the hotel Wi-Fi and I have my hotspot available in case it's needed. So just let me, send me a message if it starts suffering.
Will do.
All right. Thank you again, Captain Nick, for your great stories. And it's becoming a very popular part of the show. People look forward to it.
I love it. It's great stuff.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
All right. Let me see here. Where were we? A couple episodes ago, we were talking about app recommendations for our iPhones. And we mentioned a huge number of them. And CJ, the C-130 pilot, did a favor for us, and he wrote down all of those apps that we had talked about. So I'll include those in the show notes for this show, so you can see. I think it was Micah that was asking about, what would you recommend for applications on a new smartphone. So basically, there's only one you really have to worry about: Airline Pilot Guy app.
There you go.
That's right. Everything else is secondary.
That's right.
So you're going to put all of that into the show notes this time around so people can go there and see. Okay.
But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to go through and put in links for all that, because I'll be.
You guys can search.
I'll be working on this for a couple of weeks. I told CJ, okay, well, thank you for putting the names on it, but we need the links too. Okay.
CJ, you don't have to do that.
No, you don't.
Don't do that.
Unless you want to. All right. Jared in Alaska says the current edition of the ASRS report, the Aviation Safety Reporting System from NASA, puts out this wonderful newsletter every month. The March issue, callback 434, have some really interesting anecdotal stories regarding muscle memory, and they're all very amusing. And so I'll put a link to the actual issue in the show notes. And again, I recommend that you subscribe to the free newsletter from NASA. Again, that's the Aviation Safety Reporting System, ASRS, and their monthly newsletter callback. So thank you, Jared.
I know you weren't going to read all those stories, but I just wanted to touch on it. I actually thought this was really interesting because it's something that happens to me a lot too in my primary line of work, and not just, as a pilot. So I just wanted to touch on it so people were aware of what it was talking about. But it's basically talking about how muscle memory can kind of interfere with what you might be planning on doing in a abnormal or not normal situation. So if something comes up and you have to change up your plan, sometimes even though you're thinking that, muscle memory can be strong enough to sort of overrule that. And you really have to kind of slow down and think through what you're going to do, and maybe talk it out and get someone to check on what you're doing before you just go ahead and do what you think is going to be the correct procedure, but maybe the wrong one for that instance. So I just thought I had a good time reading through all of those stories, and it was very instructive and illustrative. So definitely read that article in the show notes.
Yes. One of the stories is about a 737, and the guy ended up shutting both engines down accidentally, which was...
That was not his intention. It just...
No.
Yeah.
So really good
was
stuff.
In one situation, and, what he was physically doing was what he would have done in a slightly different situation.
Right. Okay. Now your audio is starting to get a little bit shaky. So I'm thinking what I might do is switch to my hotspot. So before I do that, let me make you guys co-hosts so you can keep this thing going. And then I'll leave and hook up to the hotspot. All right. I'll be right back.
All right. Should we let him back in?
Yeah, I don't think he's actually calling yet, though. Because that said that before he was... I don't know how to... Maybe I should lock it and then reopen it. He should not put us in charge of this. We don't know what we're doing. No. Oh, wait, I can do it where it says show callers. Who's... Well, it says I'm calling in, which is not true. Hold on. I'm going to lock this one and then unlock it.
I see it locked right now. It doesn't say locked. It says lock C.
You try...
It doesn't say that it's locked.
Oh. So now it's just open, so just leave it there. And
yeah,
I know there's a call in button now. That's there so Jeff can call in. So don't click call in unless you're Captain Jeff, because otherwise you can't call in. And then you just have to sit here and listen to us talk about how to work Blab, and it's not very interesting.
Yeah. There's a James goes, feel the power.
That's right.
Ooh, I'm feeling it. I don't think I can handle it, but
oh, come on.
So Jen was talking about if a pilot gets let go from an airline, can he get hired on another one? Usually the way that works is there's actually a couple of forms that you have to fill out with your certificate number and all that other stuff, and that's turned in by your prospective employer into your former employer and into the FAA as well. Basically, that goes through all the data banks containing all your information and your proficiency checks and all that stuff. And then if you don't cut the mustard, then probably you won't get hired. So, I mean, the feds do keep track of that, and even more so after that accident up in Buffalo back in 2009. The entire system changed because of that. So that's kind of how that works.
Interesting.
Can you guys see me?
I can see you, but you're frozen. But I can hear you.
Frozen.
It's not that cold here. It's cold, but not that cold.
Moving in very slow motion.
Yeah.
Very
one freeze frame to another.
I think it was better with the hotel Wi-Fi.
I think so. Are you sure it wasn't just on my end that it sounded funny?
Oh, it might have been.
Or spotty?
I don't know. Everything looks like it's moving okay now.
It's a little choppy.
Okay, maybe I should go back to the hotel Wi-Fi then. Freeze framing. Freeze frame?
Yep.
Okay. I'll be right back.
I need that song to play.
I do. I should get that as a sound clip. All right, be right back.
All right.
Okay.
BRB.
Do you have any other questions we can answer here in the meantime?
You're welcome, Jennifer. Yeah, any other questions?
Oh, there was one for you, Kurish. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong. It was at the very beginning, but he was asking about, I'm trying to remember what your feedback was last episode, Kurish, and I'm sorry, I don't remember off the top of my head. He had a question for you specifically, Rick, or your take on it, and I don't remember what it was, but maybe send back in just the part that you wanted to know about from Rick, so he can answer that.
Yeah. That's
what I was going to say.
I'll answer it.
Yeah.
Why is there air? I don't know. It's one of those things where you just, I don't know. That's a good question.
I'm glad there is.
Why is up? Think about that.
Because it has to be. I don't know. Oh, oops. Sorry. Unlock, please. That would help.
Quality of the MPL cadet pilots versus the pilots going through the conventional way of training.
Oh yeah, that's what he was asking about.
Oh yeah,
they suck.
Huh?
Yeah. So we had a little discussion about that.
Well, in my experience, I've never flown with that training modality. Usually, the people that get on with the airline that I fly with, that I've been with for the last 10 years, are people that have gotten their tickets elsewhere, and they just basically have the number of hours required to be considered for a pilot position. We don't actually run a cadet program. I understand though that cadet programs are, getting better. All the while, it's very competitive to get in, to be considered to be part of that cadet program in the first place. So they're very, very picky. It's a very, very competitive type program. Academically and performance wise, I guess once you get in, you have to earn your keep. You have to basically operate at a level of proficiency that allows you to stay in that program. And then I guess by the time you are able to head out to the airlines, then you need to be at that level, because you're talking about going to the right seat of a 320 or 330 or whatever with basically no flight experience. So you need to know what you're doing, at least on that cadet transition from not knowing anything to the right seat of an airliner. So, but I've never operated with anybody that has come from a cadet program, so I don't know.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay.
Video quality looks good.
Oh, yeah.
Sound quality is
Yeah,
good.
the sound that I'm getting from you all is not that great.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Huh.
Because Rick sounds okay to me.
Yeah, you sound okay to me, Steffi.
Okay, I'm getting those little, those little boxes that say a poor internet signal.
Oh.
I'm not getting your video stuff, but I am getting Rick's, and it's kind of grainy. Huh. I don't know why it's doing that, but
yeah, that's interesting because I can see everything just fine.
Yeah, me too.
And hear everything just fine.
yeah. Wow, that's weird. Okay. Well, we'll keep going on, and if it gets too bad, then we'll stop.
Okay.
Okay. So, moving on. First Officer Craig writes, yes, I passed my check ride, and I'm now a first officer. I had my first day on Wednesday, the 9th of March. I've loved my first few days working. My third day on the line, I had to fly an ILS down to minimums, 1/2 mile visibility and 200 overcast into Pittsburgh. I've flown quite a bit and gotten a lot of actual instrument time. It's been a great learning experience so far, and I can't wait to continue flying the skies as an airline pilot. May I also mention that one of the 4 aircraft we operate doesn't have an autopilot? Great way to keep skills up for hand flying. I'll keep you guys in the APG community up to date on my progress. And Captain Jeff, as for not being able to show up for the Contrails Club, I'll forgive you eventually. Just kidding. It's okay. No worries. If you still wanted to, I can get you in touch with the new guys running it. I hope all is well. Fly safe. First Officer Craig. So congratulations, First Officer Craig, on getting out there and, and living your dream of being an
great
airline
job.
pilot. Yeah,
Absolutely, man. He's out in Hawaii, I think, something like that.
I think that his company does fly out there, but I don't think he's out in Hawaii. I think where is he?
Right.
Somewhere
He's
up
East
in,
Coast.
Yeah, East
Yeah.
Coast.
Oh, is he? Oh, wow. Nowhere near. Okay.
Yeah.
No, but you were
congratulations.
right, because the outfit he's flying for does operate a lot in Hawaii, apparently, I think.
Okay. Cool. Congratulations, Craig. Way to go, man.
Yeah, the audio is crappy.
No.
Crappy.
Really? That bad?
Yeah. Well, now it's getting better. All right, we'll keep on going. Probably because everybody is in their rooms here at the hotel now and using all this Wi-Fi to watch Netflix and stuff.
Yep, it's that time of day. Sitting there with their takeout.
Yep. 7:30.
Healthy living.
Yep.
Yep.
Don't judge.
I'm just saying.
Nev writes, that 777 back in Las Vegas, that the British Airways 777 that had the engine fire and fire on the airplane, all that. Apparently it has been under maintenance at Victorville since February 26th, and it just positioned from Victorville to Cardiff, Wales for further maintenance. And this was back on the 16th. It was operated as British Airways 9179. And so I guess soon it'll be back in service.
I think
going through C-check.
I think it already did fly a flight in service, if I remember right.
Excellent.
Within the last week. I could be wrong on that, but I thought I saw something on Twitter. So
that makes sense.
If it's on the internet,
because it's
must
back
be
on
true.
the 16th. So
yeah,
that was a couple of weeks ago. So great. Good to see the.
That is a testament to the strength of those Boeing aircraft. If it had been an Airbus, I'd be drinking a beer out of it right now.
And Captain Nick is not here to defend.
Where is Nick when you need him?
Boom.
I'll have you know, though, Rick, that Carlos did a nice job of, taking your place defending the Boeing lineage.
Yeah, I saw that. That was, it was in good hands.
Yes. I don't have my sound effect up, so we'll just have to use our imagination on that one. Peter says, I really love the show. I have a question for you guys that I hope can be answered. I doubt it. What is System-Wide Information Management, or SWIM, that the FAA is implementing? It looks to me like this is a compilation of different information systems under one all-encompassing program. From the FAA's very helpful video, I wasn't really able to discern what the system is. I'm not sure if the information is mainly for pilots or for controllers. It's always enjoyable watching you guys on YouTube. Peter, so I looked up a little bit about this SWIM program overview, System-Wide Information Management. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at this. I don't think this is for
read it.
pilots.
Yeah.
I don't think this is for air traffic controllers. I think this is for information technology professionals. And I think they're the only ones that can understand what the heck this is.
Yeah. I mean, the only analogy I could draw from this, it sounds like something that we talk about a lot of times in wanting to have in healthcare, where, different electronic medical records are connected to one another and can share information, but they aren't. It sounds like that's what they're trying to do here, connect different systems so that they can share information and make the system run more smoothly. I don't know which parts of the system they're talking about, but that's all it is.
That's what I gathered. Data sharing.
Data sharing.
Yeah. And trying to connect it all together so that it all becomes a unified system.
So that when one ATC facility goes down, they all go down now. Yay.
Yay. All right. All right. That was supposed to fade out. Sorry. William, so how do we do there, Peter? Did that explain the SWIM system? And the only other definition I have for SWIM is like when you get in the water and you start paddling. You swim.
I know a lot about that too. We can talk about swimming.
William Price.
My sports.
I hope you all are doing well. I just finished your feedback show, episode 208.5, and noticed one glaring omission until 4:05 remaining in the podcast, when finally prompted by Dr. Steph, did you think of playing Going Green? Where are you? Did you say Going Green?
We're going green. We're going green. We're going to take care of the earth. We're going green.
And he said, I also never got to hear the coffee song. I think he's talking about this one here. Yeah. So the reason for that, William Price, is that the 208.5 was not a normal show. It was, okay, stop singing. Sorry. It was a feedback extra. And when we do the feedback extra shows, we usually cut out all the normal stuff that you are used to hearing so that we can get into that feedback right away and get as much of it answered as possible. But thank you for your sentiment regarding that. He continues with, I really enjoy your bantering with each other, and you're all very entertaining. Keep up the great work and fly safe, all of you. Captain Jeff, don't go above flight level 350 with that small wing. Hey, we can make it to 370 sometimes for light enough. Captain Nick, keep the blue side up and don't let the airplane call you a retard when landing. I'm sorry, but it's going to continue to call, what is it? The kettle black? Miami Rick, if you acquire any more wristbands, you'll need to wear them on your right wrist. Dr. Steph, a serious question. My wife is 50 this year, and I'm not sure what to get her. I already got her a broom and a mop, and she wouldn't know what to do with a growler. I'm a craft beer lover. I've narrowed it down to either a very nice ring or bracelet, or the, as seen on TV, fat-burning lap band. What do you think I should choose? Thank you in advance for your expert advice, Dr. Steph.
Well, there's an obvious answer there. Can't go wrong with that, as seen on TV. No,
that's right. The fat burning lap band that lap band is what I would go for.
William, Do not
Totally.
get that one for your wife for her 15th birthday.
And the broom and
I
the
think
mop, that's not a good move either.
Very safe with the nice ring and bracelet. So
I hear you get 3 for the price of 1.
oh yeah,
you know,
I mean,
if
you might
order.
still want to buy it anyway because I'm sure it's a great deal. You know, and if you call within the next 15 minutes, they'll drop the price by another $10.
But, exactly. But
But
wait,
there's
there's
more.
more.
So he continues, cheers to all of you, and I pronounce
Samba.
the way Captain Nick does. A truly fantastic show. Sincerely, Blaster from L.A. P.S. Captain Jeff, I've reached
Nice.
a decision regarding the coffee fund. Instead of sending campaign contributions to Donald Trump, I'm sending the funds to you instead. Thank you very much.
Well, you don't want to make America great again? No, I'm just kidding.
He wants to make APG great.
That's right.
Thank you.
We could get hats that say that.
Make APG great. Okay. A few episodes ago, we talked about those wonderful leading edge devices called Kruger flaps. And we talked about slats as well. And Kevin from Annapolis, Maryland says, I'm a new listener to the podcast as of a few days ago, and I wanted to say that I enjoy the news, the technical discussion, and opinion. I have had a chance to listen to a handful of shows so far, but I'm eager to listen to more. I recently caught show 209 from last week and wanted to add to one of the discussions regarding Kruger flaps. Rick did an amazing job of answering the question on the difference between slats and Kruger flaps. I did also want to add that the slat also forms a slot, which is basically a nozzle-shaped passage that helps to direct higher pressure air from the bottom of the wing to the top to further improve lift at low speeds. As Rick said, both devices increase and change the camber of the wing, but a big difference is that a slat has this additional aerodynamic aspect to it. So, good point, Kevin. And
very true.
That is true. That is very true. Because the Kruger flap doesn't have that opening, that slot, to allow air to flow through.
But you know how the 747 makes up for that?
No.
How?
I bet you're going to tell us.
If you notice. No, I was asking you guys. No, I'm just kidding.
Ooh, I know. I don't know what to do.
If you notice, the Kruger flaps inboard of the number 3 and the number 2 and number 3 engines, those are fixed camber Kruger flaps. The Kruger flaps, the outboard Kruger flaps, the ones near the wingtips and the ones in between engines 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, those are variable camber Kruger flaps. So you can actually change the camber in those. So as you select, if you've ever noticed on Boeing aircraft and Airbus aircraft as well, the difference between takeoff slat setting and landing slat setting is that on takeoff slat setting, the slat is not all the way down, not deflected all the way down, and on landing it is. On the 747 is kind of the same. The camber for a takeoff Kruger flap setting, the camber is different than it is on a landing flap setting. And the reason why the 747 has Kruger flaps as opposed to slats is because of that wing sweep angle. If you look at the wing sweep angle of the 747, is the highest wing sweep angle of any commercial aircraft out there, which is why it is and remains to this day the fastest commercial airliner out there now that Concorde's not flying. 37.5 degrees of wing sweep. Very good for high-speed flight, but not so good for slow-speed flight, which is why they had to come up with this variable camber system to make the wing behave create that extra lift it needs to maintain that behemoth, airborne right before landing. And the way to do that is by changing the camber on those Kruger flaps. And that's why the only 747 has it. Really cool stuff.
Duh. Everybody knows that, Rick.
I know. I'm sorry.
Okay. Ray Williams had something to add to the Kruger flap discussion.
Hi, APG team. This is Ray Williams from Alpharetta, Georgia. Couple of APG sessions ago, some cat asked about the Kruger flaps, and Rick had spoken about the 747 having it. And today appeared on airliners.net a great picture by a guy called Zabo Gabor of a 747 with the Kruger flaps extended. and you can see exactly how they work. It's a great photo. Now, this brings to mind a question. I'm into photography, and of course, I take a fair amount of pictures of aeroplanes. I was wondering if one evening I was sitting out at the end of a runway, and I set up several flashes on this 747. And judging by the shadows, it looks like kind of in line with the camera. So my question is, at a few seconds before touchdown, if there was a bright flash from the ground, would it unduly alarm the pilots? Might alarm the passengers, but on the other hand, judging by the accounts they give the newspapers, pretty much everything alarms passengers these days. So just a thought, because it's a really neat picture. In the 60s or 70s, there was a great picture of a Pan Am 707 taking off at night. The guy had used a rear curtain flash so that as the aircraft came down the runway, you just saw its lights in a single stream or a set of streams. And then just as his shutter was closing, he fires the flash and you get the picture of the aircraft at the end of that stream. It was really good. So, doing something like that sounds cool, but I would imagine to get that aircraft at 50, 100 feet, the flash is going to be pretty strong. And I really don't want to spend too much time talking to the descendants of J. Edgar Hoover. So let me know what you think about that. Thanks a lot. Thanks for the great shows, and have a good time. Cheers.
That's a great question, Ray. And in my opinion, I think a regular flash unit on a camera is the amount of light intensity is not going to be even something that we'd probably even notice. Honestly,
yeah,
like a laser.
Exactly. I was gonna mention that. Exactly right. And if you notice, on just about, well, not just about, but many runways out there, I see them more overseas than I see them here in the States. There are there's a set of lights. It's called the rails, REIL, and that stands for runway end identifier lights, which are these flashing white lights, and one's on one end of on one side of the runway, and the other one's on the other side of the runway, looking from the threshold on. And those flashing lights are there to help you to identify the runway, And I imagine that those flashes are more powerful than the flashes from a camera.
They're pretty bright. There are a lot of GA airports too. They are bright, and I can't imagine a camera is anything like that. So.
Right.
And one last little tidbit on the Kruger flaps on the 747. This is for the real app geeks, which is, all of you guys and gals listening to the APG. If you notice, the second that the pilot selects reverse thrust, you're going to notice how the inboard Kruger flaps and the mid-wing Kruger flaps retract because of the way the reverse thrust exits the engine through those through the Guyton vanes, because the engine kind of opens up and then the thrust is actually directed forward from the engine. And so those flaps were in the way. So for that reverse thrust to be effective and for those Kruger flaps to not get damaged, they figured, let's go ahead and retract those. And then once reverse thrust is deselected and the engines are brought back down to forward idle, the Kruger flaps redeploy. Ooh. And that is Kruger flaps.
Fancy.
Very.
That Boeing engineers, they know what they're doing. Right. Thank you very much for that. Stephen Ward says a few episodes back, there was some discussion about the assumed temperature method of reduced performance takeoff. When listening to the discussion, it struck me that there is still some mystery and confusion surrounding this topic. So here's a simple and I hope correct description of the assumed temperature method. Boy, have you had enough of the assumed temperature method?
I know, right?
You can never get enough.
Yeah.
No,
if I'm wrong, that's right. That's what she said. If I'm wrong, then please ignore this feedback. The Wikipedia recently commented about the stoichiometric mixture, the ideal ratio. Did I say that right? Stoichiometric?
Stoichiometric.
Stoichiometric mixture, the ideal ratio of air to fuel that burns all fuel with no excess air. We all know that the density of air decreases as temperature increases. At 0 degrees centigrade or Celsius, the density of air is 1.29 kilograms per cubic meter, while at 30, it's only 1.16 kilograms per cubic meter. That means there is only 90% as much air by volume at 30 than there is at 0. Approached differently, assuming that the engine is producing optimal performance, 10% less air at 30 degrees Celsius means burning 10% less fuel and results in 10% less power from the engine. So we are now waiting to depart on runway 35 right. It is 0 degrees Celsius, and our balanced takeoff calculation shows we only need 6,500 feet using full power. Since 35 right is 10,000 feet long, we can reduce the amount of takeoff power we will use and still have a balanced takeoff. Our 777's fuel management computer controls the amount of fuel flowing to the engine and knows that a fuel flow of X will produce maximum thrust at 0 degrees Celsius. It also knows that a fuel flow of 90% X will produce maximum thrust at 30 degrees Celsius, since there's only 90% as much air by volume at 30 than at 0. By telling the fuel management computer to assume an air temperature of 30 instead of 0, the computer will reduce the fuel flow by 10% on the assumption that this is the maximum amount of fuel that can be burned given that higher air temperature. On the show, you've cited a number of reasons why it is good to not use full takeoff power unless absolutely necessary. Using the assumed temperature method, even when the pilot brings the throttles to full power for the takeoff above, the fuel management computer will only allow a fuel flow of 90%, since we set the assumed temperature to 30 instead of 0, the actual temperature. By letting the fuel management computer do the calculations and the thinking, the pilot in command doesn't have to tinker with making a less than full throttle setting while focusing on the takeoff roll. Very good. Yeah, so basically it takes away all that focus and concentration on, making sure that you're only at 90%. You just hit the normal takeoff position, and the computers do all the necessary adjustments to the fuel flow to give you the necessary amount of thrust to make a safe takeoff and a balanced takeoff, right?
Precisely. That's exactly how it works.
Exactly.
And now a question for all. Most of my flying is intercontinental, so I'm mostly at big international airports. Boston, Kennedy, Detroit, Amsterdam, Charles de Gaulle, and Barcelona as the usual suspects. Some planes are easy for me to identify. The 747, the MD-80/90, the 380, and 340 all have unique characteristics. But others are not so easy for me to tell apart, especially from a distance, such as the 75, 76, and 330, or the 319, 320 from the 737. Can you guys give some tips on how to easily identify these aircraft? Also, are there some common telltale signs that say Boeing versus Airbus? As always, you guys do a great job, and many thanks. Tailwinds, blue skies, and clear, or CAVU, CAVU, all. Stephen Ward. So, okay, go ahead. Rick, what's the best way to tell the difference between a Boeing and an Airbus?
Boeing actually gets off the ground. Next question.
Boom. You know what? Sometimes when I'm taxiing around and you're behind a 757 or 767, I have to kind of go, is the fuselage big? Or, when you're looking at it from behind, it's sometimes hard to really know whether it's a 7.6 or a 7.5.
Well, if it's well, I was going to say, the difference between a 7.6 and 7.5, if you're taxiing behind one, is that obviously the width of the fuselage, the 7.6 is a twin aisle aircraft, whereas the 7.5 is a single aisle aircraft. But if you're if you're looking at it from behind, then the difference is in the wing. The 757 does not have an inboard aileron, whereas the 767 does.
So obvious.
That's clearly.
Duh. I mean, everybody can see that.
Just look. You just got to know what to look for.
It would take me forever to be like, I don't know.
So that's one thing. I guess if you're looking at them, the profile of the aircraft, I guess from the side, the 757, the nose landing gear, it sits further behind the flight deck than the nose landing gear on the 7.6. The nose landing gear on the 7.6 is just right about where the cockpit door is. So that's another kind of giveaway there. Also,
when you're looking at it from the profile view, it's pretty obvious to me the difference between. But like if you're right behind it, I don't know why at that angle it's hard sometimes to discern. Yeah.
Well, I mean, next
I have
time
more trouble just looking straight up overhead. I don't know. Probably that's an easy way to pick out aircraft, but it always trips me up.
Well, right. If you look at it from above, the 7.5 and 7.6, they have different wing sweep angles. The 7.6 has 31.5, I believe, and the 7.6 has 31.5, and the 7.5 has a bit less. That doesn't get to 30 degrees on the 7.5. It's a slower aircraft.
That's so obvious too.
I'd have to see them next to each other to really, because just looking up from the ground, I can't.
Really?
I'm just not good enough to judge the angle, I guess. Yeah.
What? Okay. Well, how about
maybe it's just more practice?
How about the? How do you tell the difference between a 7.6 and a 330? Looking at it.
I guess the profile is the 330. It's kind of the nose on the 330 is slow, so I guess is low. So the main landing gear is a little higher than the nose landing gear is, so that's why the fuselage kind of sits nose low, which is why when Airbus decided it was a good idea to make the 330 into a freighter, they actually had to lengthen the nose landing gear to make the fuselage as level as they possibly could. And that's why if you look at 330 freighters out there, they have these really weird fairing underneath the flight deck where the nose landing gear retracts, because that's how they actually got the aircraft level, so a little patchwork there from our friends at Airbus, not surprised there, but they gotta have a chance at at producing freighters as well, bless their hearts.
I was going to say that you can, when they're taxiing around, the 330 definitely looks like it's the deck angle is like a couple degrees below, the horizon, a little bit nose low.
The wing, the 330's got these winglets. It's a very, very characteristic wing, very European wing. But you know what? Basically, I guess the easiest way is by the deck angle. It's dead giveaway when you have the aircraft kind of like the nose low type attitude. That's a 330 right away. And then as far as these 7.3s versus the baby buses, the 737s, the nose section, or section 41 that it's called. Every Boeing aircraft out there, the nose and the cockpit section, that's called the section 41. And the section 41 on a 737 is a lot pointier than it is on Airbuses. And Airbuses have a very round kind of cockpit area, whereas the 737 has a very pointy nose. And interestingly enough, it's the same nose section that the 707 had, same nose section from the 727. And the same nose section from the 737 Classics. So the nose section, section 41 on all those Boeing models remains the same as a Classic.
Micah says that the wings of the Airbus seem to have more fairings. And I think that, they do have those canoe fairings. They're more prominent, I'd say, than on the Boeing wing.
Yeah, and they're shaped different as well. And there's other things, if you know what to look for. Obviously the landing gear arrangement, the shape of the engines, the pylons. There's other things that you can look for, but just basically just the, I don't know, just from profile view, it's pretty easy to tell.
Canoe? Yes, I can. Very funny, Jeff. All right. Continuing on. Thank you, Stephen, for your feedback. Anything else to add before we move on to Randy? Who wants to talk about it?
No, I'm with you, Stephen. I need to get out there and do more plane spotting because I have the same problems you do.
If you're around them all the time, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, it's different.
So I do remember. Can't tell a 7.5 from a 7.6 from behind, right?
I do remember.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't see anymore. Maybe I don't know. You know what? Another aspect of it is maybe the angle that I'm looking at it is because I'm not so far off the ground. Than when you're looking at it up above. No, I'm serious. I'm trying to be funny. When you're on that 777, you're like, way up high and looking down at everybody. You're always looking down at everybody. Yeah. Very condescending.
Very.
Anyway, Randy says, I've been listening to the podcast for almost 2 years and I'm sick and tired of it. No. And I'm an American living and working in Bangkok, Thailand, and a lapsed pilot who plans to begin flying again once this assignment is completed. Before I get to my feedback, let me say to each of you thank you to each of you for the outstanding podcast. As many listeners have commented, the show improves with each new iteration, and the latest Captain Nick's Plain Tales is a joy to hear. Thank you for everything you do. You're welcome, Randy. It's our pleasure, actually. First, I agree with Captain Nick that the human factor should airplanes be flying themselves, that's the name of the article, is an outstanding article, one of the most thought-provoking I've read in recent memory, aviation-related or not. I believe one of the things that separates this article from so many we read in the press is the knowledge of the author, William Langewiesche. Is that the way you pronounce that guy's name?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to me.
He is an exceptional journalist and accomplished pilot. His father, Wolfgang L., wrote the definitive book on the art of flying, Stick and Rudder, originally published in 1944, and the first book many of us read when we began our flight training.
Yep.
Interestingly, as Captain Nick was reading the final paragraph from the article, he was in fact reading the prediction of Air Asia 8501 in Indonesia. Here are the words again, quote, "Next time it will be some other airline, some other culture, and some other failure, but it will almost certainly involve automation and will perplex us when it occurs." Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
Secondly, I wanted to comment on the article involving the mother who was humiliated by another passenger for breastfeeding her baby on a flight. Two thoughts. One, flying alone with a small child is incredibly difficult, and we should all do our best to help our fellow travelers, both on the flight and in life. Secondly, babies are either feeding, sleeping, or crying. In her own self-interest, the complainer should have been happy the child was feeding and sleeping. The alternative could have been much more challenging for all involved. Hear, hear, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
When I heard the story, I thought of this clip from an all-time great movie, Stripes. Oops, I guess I was supposed to download this. Okay, he says.
It's just the last 2 seconds of the clip.
Oh, is it? Should I try to get this clip loaded up?
Oh, so when I played it, it loaded an ad and then it played through.
Well, you know what? I don't have an ad because I have YouTube Red. So let me get the last part of this here and I'll edit it. Oops, that was more than the last couple seconds. Or no, less than the last couple seconds.
Lighten up, Francis.
Was that it?
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
Lighten up.
Lighten up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I wish I had listened to that before I did that. Okay. Going back to his feedback. Again, that was from the movie Stripes. I think Sergeant Hulka's admonition at the end would make a great sound clip for future use whenever there's a story about someone wound up just a little too tightly. Lighten up, Francis. Again, many thanks for all the hard work you put into the show. It's a joy to be a listener, Randy. Well, thanks, Randy, for all your kind words. And we agree, which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a good one from Scott. He says, I have a question about the phonetic alphabet. In the phonetic alphabet, D is usually Delta, but there's also an airline called Delta. Does this ever cause any issues, or do pilots just use something other than Delta for D? And that's Scott Shields. And so the only thing I can say about that is that at the Atlanta International Airport, where that's Delta's headquarters, and there are a lot of Delta flights in and out of that airport every single day, the people at the airport decided to refer to taxiway D as taxiway Dixie instead of Delta. And supposedly that was because they didn't want any kind of confusion when it comes to, all the different airplanes out there with Delta call signs. But I can say that at all the other airports in the world, they don't do that. And they do have, many of them, if not most, have a taxiway Delta. And to my knowledge, nobody's ever been confused about it. So
you can get a lot from context.
Yeah, a lot. You're right. So I've never, not that I fly for Delta, I fly for Acme. And so I've never, had the potential to be confused about taxiway Delta myself. But I have friends that fly for Delta, and they say that it's never been a factor or an issue. But it is interesting, though. At Atlanta International Airport, they say taxiway Dixie. I guess, it's the South, Dixie and all that.
It fits.
Yeah.
It's appropriate.
Nice. Does a banjo go off when the controller says that?
Yeah. How'd you know?
Just saying,
That'd be nice if it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The banjo is out of service. It's on ATIS.
Yes. Use caution.
Paddle faster.
Let's see. Now, why is it that my Chris Miller feedback on my iPad doesn't have an audio file, but the one that I have on my other program does? I don't know. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the echo button. Oh, it's been on this whole. Have you guys been hearing an echo?
Just once.
A little bit.
All right. Well, I'm going to leave it on, and I'm going to play this.
Captain Jeff, just following up on a comment you made a couple weeks ago on your time between flights on your domestic routes. I assume you normally just stay on board on your segments until your day is done, and then you head straight to the hotel. But do you ever have time, an hour, let's say, between flights where you have to change planes and may just catch a bite to eat? You said you may go to a crew rest area behind the scenes at the airport, but I do see crews frequently having a quick bite at a food establishment within the airport, getting ready for a flight. Maybe it's just before your first of the day. So how do your changes go from flight to flight?
That is a good question, and we were talking about that earlier.
Kind of a timely one.
Yeah, very timely. I had a couple hours between flights this morning in Atlanta, and I got to enjoy breakfast with a friend of mine, Dr. Steph. And, it just depends on how much time. Sometimes we have like 3 to 4 hours between flights at airports. And if it's at an airport where we have a crew base, we usually try to find the pilot lounge where things are away from public view, and you have like what do they call it, lazy boy, chairs and that kind of thing where you can kind of relax. And there's usually a big screen TV with some kind of program on, either one of the news networks or maybe one of the sports channels going on in the background. You'll see people, in these chairs trying to catch a nap and that kind of thing, which is another option if you have enough time. But there's always that risk, though, when you go and make yourself comfortable on one of these easy chairs and take a nap, that you've set your alarm on your watch or your phone, and that you'll oversleep and get the old PA system going down there, paging you and asking you why you're not at the airplane. But there are a lot of places. Desks and computers and stuff. A lot of people do, like scheduling work and other personal work on their personal computers and that kind of thing, and just kind of hanging out down there and talking with other people. So that's one option that we have. People that are kind of very health conscious, if there's a big enough break, there's actually in Atlanta a place that we can go to actually work out and has showers and all that kind of stuff, kind of like a mini gym.
Nice.
Below gate, nice. I think it's A27, somewhere in there. So there are all kinds of different things you can do. If it's a short time between flights, long enough that you have time to do something, but not long enough to go to the pilot lounge or whatever, we can duck away where there's not a lot of activity at one of the gates, maybe that doesn't have a flight for a few hours, and kind of just find a place to sit or, grab something to eat or whatever, talk on the phone, catch up with the family, that kind of thing. So.
And this is all part of your duty period, right?
No, we're not getting paid, like per hour, like we're actually flying, but it's part of our credit system. So if we have a certain amount of hours that we're on duty for that day, then that triggers a certain amount of credit, so that they don't have us fly like one little short flight in the morning and then have you hanging around for 10 hours and then flying another 15-minute flight later on, and only paying you for those 2 short flights. if your duty day is a long day, then a certain amount of credit is applied so that it is incentive for the company not to have you hanging around at the airport all day. Same thing for, like flying you on a trip, like say a 4-day trip, and you fly once on the first day and then you're laying over for 2 or 3 days and then once on the way back. Instead of paying you just for those times that you've flown, they most contracts have a credit calculation based on how much time you've been away from home or how much time you've been on duty, that kind of thing. All kinds of different calculations that keep you being efficient and not taking advantage of it.
Right. Right. And then I guess the other thing that I was kind of going for there was, the 8-hour maximum duty period 12-hour maximum duty period that you have as a single
non-augmented,
I guess,
right?
Pilot, co-pilot, exactly, non-augmented crew. While you're waiting, or just waiting for your next aircraft to come over so you can get on that jet and then take it somewhere else, I guess you are eating into that duty time, that duty period.
Yes,
I guess that's what I was kind of.
And there's been a shift since the new fatigue and duty period regulations, FAR 117, where everything used to be mostly predicated upon the actual flying that you're doing, your actual flying time, and now it's more based upon your duty day, and that's the limitation and restriction. So, as Rick just said, if you're flying in the morning and then you're off for several hours in between, and then you fly again, all that time is counting toward your duty day. So, it gets complicated.
Exactly right.
But and we have to keep track of it to make sure that we're not, violating any regulations and that sort of thing. And each airline has a different contract. The union has a contract with the company. Of course, everybody has to, comply with the regulatory statutes, whether the FAA or the EASA rules or whatever, ruling organization is in effect for whatever part of the world you're flying. So, but they're all pretty similar, I think.
Yeah,
they have to be
basically off of our FARs.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Landon has sent us this. He says, "Hello, Captain Jeff, Captain Steph, Captain Rick, and old Dot Curmudgeon. This is Landon again. Thank you for answering my question about the chunks of missing airplane pieces in episode 211. It was great to hear my name on the podcast. I have my question answered by some absolutely great people. I noticed that I didn't give a little history of myself, so here I am. I'm a private pilot and police officer in a city near Duke University in North Carolina. I've been flying airplanes since I was 14 years old, and I'm ready to get out of this law enforcement profession and embark on the long and hard journey of becoming an airline pilot. I feel it has been far too long of running toward danger for the past almost 9 years now and not flying high over top of it. Back to business, though. My question to you all, minus the old curmudgeon, can you each describe to all of us APGers how each of your airplanes that you fly feel in your hands when hand flying it? Dr. Captain Steph, I believe you and I have flown most of the same airplanes except for the Seneca. I'd like to know how that handles. I ask this because when you ask other pilots how airplanes feel when flying, they say, oh, it flies like a charm, or it feels great. Is that what she said? Can you describe the feeling? That was not me. That was Landon that said that. Can you describe the feeling in all axes of flight and all phases of flight? Captain Nick? Oh, he's not here. You can just describe how the stick feels in your left hand. I'm very thankful.
I think we know what his answer would be. So we'll just move on.
Very thankful he's not here to answer that. Because we really don't want to know. Since you fly Airbuses and such, just kidding. Okay. But I'm a Boeing guy, most particularly 75, 76 type guy. They are just pure awesomeness. Anyway, stay safe up there. Tailwinds and blue skies. So Landon, congratulations. And we are there for you and supporting you and getting into the airline pilot profession. So what do you say? How does the Seneca feel?
How does the Seneca feel? So, he said we've flown a lot of the same types of airplanes. So I'm guessing that he's probably flown a Piper Aero, which is the complex aircraft that you'd probably fly before getting into something like the Seneca.
What is complex, Steffi?
Oh, so complex. So it's an aircraft that has a variable pitch prop, a retractable landing gear system, and flaps.
Yes. Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know a few things.
Play this.
So the thing, yes, the Seneca also being a Piper product, you get into it and it looks very much the same, other than the fact that now you have 2 engines, so you have 2 sets of controls for everything, and more instrument gauges for your extra engine. So that's kind of a little disconcerting because you expect it to fly very similar, and actually, for the most part, it does. When you're off the ground and flying, it handles very similarly. The controls themselves, though, feel much heavier because it's a much heavier aircraft. And I noticed that the most, particularly on landing, and I had a very, very difficult time actually learning how to judge the flare appropriately in that aircraft, mostly because it is so heavy on the controls. Now, there was when I first started flying the aircraft, it does have electronic trim, but that broke like 2 weeks into me flying it. So you have to do all the trim by hand, and just in the last 10 feet off the ground, if you don't have it set up just right, it can be a lot. Because as soon as you start to try and flare, even just pulling back a little bit on the yoke, it's like the plane just wants to take off and fly again. So I actually talked to Rick about that a little bit, because I was just like beating my head against the wall trying to figure out how to land this airplane. And his suggestion actually worked pretty well. Trim it for the landing flare on final, and so you're actually given the yoke a little bit of forward pressure coming into land, and then let back on that a little bit, and that seems to work pretty well. But everyone I talked to, and I don't know if it's just ours, the Seneca that I rent in particular, that's real tricky like that, but everyone who flies it says it's kind of a pain in the rear end to judge appropriately on the flare and land smoothly. So it's just one of those things. But otherwise, it's an awesome airplane. Feels great.
Well, regarding that technique, isn't there a risk, though, that if you have it trimmed and you're pushing forward on the controls and then relieving the pressure to flare and land, that if you have to go around and really cog the power in, that you're going to be in a situation where it's like trimmed too far nose up?
I guess it could be. But I think as long as you know where you have it trimmed, you should be able to anticipate that a little bit.
Right. And that, and basically what I told Steffi was that, I'm not saying, make sure that you have the aircraft trimmed so that when you release the pressure, the aircraft flares by itself. Just basically, obviously, always have control of the yoke and know how much trim you have in, so that in case you do have to go around, you have that pitch control you need when putting that power on, because that put the power on is going to give you that nose up moment there. So you want to make sure you can control that. And
it's not a lot, but the reason that you do that is because, especially for me, I've got a little 90-pound weakling over here. It's such a heavy aircraft that I almost, if I'm trying to trim at the same time I'm trying to flare, I don't have enough strength to actually pull back on the yoke enough to make sure that I don't come down nose wheel first. So there has to be some trim in for it to work.
Yeah.
It was just a matter of finding the right amount, and I wasn't giving it enough probably.
The reason why I mentioned that is because when I was flying the 141, it was speaking of how an airplane feels, it was very, very heavy control feel. And, you really worked your upper body when you were hand flying the airplane. Even though the controls were hydraulically actuated, you still had that control, very heavy control feel. And I remember on a training mission, we were somewhere out over the Pacific somewhere doing touch and goes at, I don't know, it was Guam or whatever, that one of our trainees was a female pilot who was, not as big and strong in her upper body as the rest of us were. And she was coming down and trimming to flare the airplane. Now, I know that's different than what you just described. Right. And I remember the instructor kind of really getting on to her about, you cannot do that because of the situation where you put on all those 4 engines and you get that tremendous upward motion just because you're putting the power in on that high wing,
Sure.
With the engines on the wings. And then it's just compounded by the fact that you have the airplane trimmed for that flare. And maybe it was because of the way the airplane was configured and the characteristics of the trim and everything else, which probably don't exactly equate to your Seneca situation, but that's why.
No, but I still think it's a good point. I mean, you could, I think, find yourself in the same situation where it'd be hard to get enough of the trim out if you put in too much beforehand, if you had to go around.
Yeah.
I think you could get into that same.
And I think that, that Tardistan 737 incident, and I think that possibly and probably this recent Fly Dubai incident that might be part of what, helped them get into this bad situation, is the way they had the airplane trimmed. I don't know exactly, if that's going to be something that they're going to see or not in these two incidents. But somebody was saying in the chat room, the importance of trim. And I can tell you that the airplane that I fly, especially the Mad Dog, that the difference between the people that I fly with that fly it smoothly, which seems to be fewer and far between. Unfortunately, a lot of the people I'm flying with today just don't seem to understand how to fly the airplane smoothly. It's when they're hand flying it, even actually when they're actually flying it on automation, they don't seem to know how to do the automation properly to get a nice smooth effect. But if you're hand flying the airplane and you have it trimmed, it makes a tremendous difference on the smoothness of the flight. And, because you're fighting those control forces constantly and you're jerking the airplane around. But if you just, trim off those forces, and it doesn't matter whether you're flying a Mad Dog, a 777, or a Seneca, or a Piper Arrow, whatever, if you have that airplane trimmed for that speed and that configuration, man, you can fly that thing solid as a rock. And very, very smoothly. But if you don't have that trimmed, then you're going to be fighting it constantly, and it's not going to be as smooth. And for the longest time, people would when I fly a flight and people are getting off the airplane, and they said, they make comments about how smooth the flight was. I always thought that it just recently dawned on me what they really meant. I always thought it was because they were talking about turbulence. And I always say something like, well, I wish I could take credit for that, but it's Mother Nature, and sometimes it's bumpy and sometimes it's smooth. But then I finally realized what they really mean, I think, is the fact that when they're sitting back there and they're feeling the airplane go through all the pitch changes and turns and everything else, when I fly, because I try to make sure that it's all nice and trimmed up, and I try to really make it smooth, and so that they don't even feel anything. That's what they're talking about. And I wish that so many of the people that I fly with that don't fly it that way, I wish they realized how important that was to passengers, especially ones that have anxiety, when they're back there in the
or those of us who are trying to sleep. No, I'm just kidding.
Or people trying to sleep, whatever, So I'll step down from my soapbox, but sometimes I'll even make it a point when I'm hand flying the airplane and I have it all trimmed up, I'll just let go of it. And I'm not trying to say, hey, look, I'm not touching the airplane and it's like doing everything it's supposed to be doing here. And I don't have the autopilot on and it's nice and smooth. See, if you trim the airplane, how, smooth the airplane can fly. I don't do that, but I try to, do that occasionally just to kind of prove that you don't have to be holding on to that yoke or stick or whatever and bumping it and trying to chase that flight director bar constantly and being super rough with the airplane, which I just hate.
I mean, the flight director is it's a nice suggestion.
Yeah.
I see what you're telling me, but I want this, which is not exactly what you want. So,
too many people would kind of like chase that flight director constantly, and the flight director is and it'll adapt to what you're doing as well. It'll see what kind of changes you're making, and it'll refine its suggestion to where it thinks you should have the pitch and everything else. But if you're constantly changing it and following it and making these minute changes, it's going to keep doing that, and it's just going to feel bad.
Exactly right. You're not giving it a chance for it to settle down. And it's funny what you mentioned here, because when you have the proper pitch attitude set for the type of climb rate that you're looking for based on the kind of power that you have, the flight director will eventually settle back down to where you are. instead of you having to go up to chase it, So, yeah, I mean, it's all about flying smoothly, and not only the flying, but also the management of the systems, the management of the automation, the management of the, believe it or not, the pressurization and air conditioning system, because that's also something else that you have to be very smooth with,
Don't get me started on that. You've heard me say so many times that, the way my airline wants me to fly the airplane is like, wait until the very last minute to start your descent and then do this idle power descent. And the fact that at least my airplane, the engines at idle power don't do a very good job of keeping up with the pressurization. And so, and it's not even smooth. It's like, whoa, here we go. We're going down the roller coaster. And then all of a sudden your ears are popping and everything. I'm thinking, I hate this. Why are you doing that? I'm so close to saying, do me a favor. From the next time we do a descent, could you start a little bit earlier so the pressurization can keep up with our ear popping and everything else? And so, especially this time of year when people are suffering, allergies and have their sinus, issues and everything else. I mean, it's just uncomfortable. And I know it's probably burning a little bit extra gas, but to me, that's worth it to keep everybody's ears from, going crazy. But maybe that's
and I'll just say one other.
Yeah, go ahead, Steffi.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say one other thing, just going back to trim, especially on general aviation aircraft. It's really important for your workload as well to have the airplane trimmed. You don't want to spend the entire time chasing that if you don't have an autopilot, especially. So learn how to trim your aircraft, learn how to fly it trimmed. It takes a lot of your workload down a notch. So
it takes a while to learn how to do it.
Oh, yeah. Really, I mean, it takes practice, but you have to practice it. So don't expect to go out there and do it perfectly the first time, but work towards it, figure out what it means to be, to have the aircraft trimmed, and it'll make a big difference at some point for you.
Exactly right. And as far as burning fuel, a little bit extra fuel with that descent technique that Captain Jeff just spoke about, I mean, there you might burn a little bit extra fuel up on the higher altitudes, which is what you want to do, because when you're flying up high, as we that piece of feedback we just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, that air density, amount of fuel required for that mixture to be correct is lower. So you want to burn that extra fuel high up and manage your descent in such a way so that you don't get to your assigned altitude, 10 miles before you're supposed to get there. Granted, there's times when you are being radar vectored. There's times when you're flying into very congested type airspace and they need you to get down to a certain level and you just need to go down there and you're there. But if you can help it, if you fly into, a lot of the flying that I do, sometimes we'll fly even into the more congested type airports, but I'll time my descent in such a way so that I fly it at idle from top of descent all the way down to glide slope intercept. And that takes a little bit of practice. You need to know what your airplane is going to do. You need to anticipate your aircraft. You need to keep in mind that you're flying a very, very heavy aircraft, and you need to account for that deceleration, that inertia, and you need to give yourself room to decelerate and configure the aircraft, get the aircraft dirtied up, flaps deployed, configured for landing, and be stabilized by 1,000 feet. And that's where the joy in flying comes, for me at least, that challenge of getting the aircraft down at idle, smooth descent, smooth pressurization transitions, power on at glide slope intercept, and a smooth landing. I'd much rather have a smooth transitional descent than a very smooth landing, personally. As far as how the 7.5s and 7.6 handle, I never flew the 7.5. I only flew the 7.6. It's the same type rating, it's the same license, so I'm qualified. Well, yeah, I'm qualified for both. Not current though, but I'm qualified for both. And the handling itself, the 767 versus the 757, I flew the 7.5 in the simulator. You can certainly tell that the 7.5 it's sportier. It's much sportier. The thrust to weight ratio relationship between the thrust available and the weight of the aircraft is a lot higher in the 7.5 than it is in the 7.6. A bit more responsive on all three axes and with the thrust levers as well. The 767 is more like a big American car, kind of like a Cadillac, very stable in flight path. Takes a little bit longer to respond, even though you have outboard and inboard ailerons and roll spoilers to aid you in that rolling maneuver there. So it's a little bit not sluggish, but a little bit slower than the 7.5. The 7.5 is, very, very sporty, very nice airplane to fly, at least in the sim, which is what I did. The 777 is a whole other animal. That is, it's amazingly responsive, given the size of the aircraft, but you have to keep in mind that it's a fly-by-wire type airplane, so you're not actually controlling the aircraft directly. You are sending inputs to computers that are going to basically analyze what you're requesting from the aircraft, and based on those inputs, send out signals to power control units to deflect the control surfaces to give you the desired performance you want. And that happens, instantaneously. It's very, very easy airplane to fly, very stable. It takes a little bit of getting used to, and I've talked about how when transitioning from the 767 to the 777, you tend to over control the aircraft a little bit, and this is very, very evident on final and short final and during the landing type maneuver, because you're used to kind of manhandling the 767 a little bit because of the fact that it is kind of like like a big pickup truck. The 777 is like a nice Jaguar, nice British car. And it takes very, very little control input to get it to do what you want it to do. And also, you're not requesting aileron deflection. You're actually requesting roll rates and pitch rates. So you kind of have to take that cassette out of your head about, flying an aircraft like you would, a conventional aircraft, and put that fly-by-wire cassette in your head and realize that you're not requesting pitch angles or roll angles. You're actually requesting rates instead of angles. So once you understand that, then it becomes a little bit easier to fly. But they both fly great, great aircraft.
Yeah, it's funny how the different airliners have different handling characteristics. I remember your discussion about over controlling reminded me of a guy that was a 727 co-pilot who was about to upgrade to the L1011, and the captain didn't really get along very well with the co-pilot to begin with, but so he wasn't very eloquent about the way he expressed himself with him. But anyway, he basically said to him, if you fly and over control the lateral axis of the airplane as you do right now when you're on the L1011, you said it's not gonna fly. I mean, not fly, but it's not gonna go well for you. It's going to be really rough, and you're going to get screamed at by everybody because you just cannot do the way the L1011, believe it or not, the lateral control compared to the 727 was, as you said, Rick, it sounds to me a lot like the 777, where it's a bigger airplane, but the way they engineered the controls, it's almost more sensitive, and it reacts more readily to your inputs than the 727 did. The 727 was more of a older generation, kind of flying a truck, but in a good way, a nice truck.
Now, was aileron control in the 727 hydraulic, or was that the trim tabs? Okay, cool.
No, all hydraulic, as well. The L1011, but it's just the way they designed the aileron spoiler integration, and it was just much more responsive on the L1011. Believe it or not, I mean that the L1011 was an enigma in many ways because it was much faster than the 727. It was more responsive than the 727, but it was a much larger airplane. It's just they did a great job of engineering the thing,
and fast too.
Yeah, and fast. Mm-hmm. Traveled easily at 0.8687 all day long, and
nice.
Yeah. So anyway, a lot of good discussion about about trim and the way an airplane handles and feels, and even I'm sure that you guys can relate to this as well. Maybe not so much, Steph, because you're probably flying like one example of that particular model of an airplane, and not like you're flying several.
Yeah, there's not all.
Yeah.
I mean, rarely it's more than one or two of the same model.
But maybe if you have flown like more than one Piper Arrow or 7.
Yeah, I've flown a bunch of 172s.
Yeah, so you probably notice some difference between the different airplanes.
Sure.
I think for the most part, on the Mad Dog, they all pretty much fly the same. But occasionally, I'll get in one where you can just tell the cables are like a little I don't know, not as tight as they should be. You know,
Loose.
Like the rigging's not right.
Yeah, the rigging is a little sloppy and that kind of thing. The way it handles. But you know, for the most part, they're pretty similar. What about the 777, Rick? I know you don't have a lot of them, but can you tell one over the other, or they pretty much fly consistently?
You know what, the 777 fly consistently because, again, you know, it's a fly-by-wire system, so it's electronic. The 767s, however, they did have you know, different personalities. Absolutely, you could definitely tell. There used to be this 176. I think I'll forget what the registration was, but anyway, you had to fly with 2 units of rudder to the right, because that's just the way that airplane flew, you know. So for you to be able to, it was a bent airplane. So for you to be able to center that yoke, you had to give it 2 units of trim to the right. Some airplanes would, I don't know, just it's kind of hard to explain, like feel differently, you know.
They're a little quirky.
Yeah, even from the way. Like I would set my seat, because the seat that there's a scale that helps you to set your seat, you know, height wise and you know, forwards and aft. And some airplanes have a little indicator on the center post of the flight deck there, and there's this little, like, you know, amber ball, and you're supposed to cover the little wide ball with the amber ball. That's supposed to give you the right eye height. The Boeings that I flew don't have that. We have a little scale on the side of the seat that tells us how high we are and then how forward or aft we are, you know, and we kind of set our eyesight, you know, height that way. And that kind of changed from airplane to airplane, you know. Even though I'd have the same setting on one and then the same setting on the other, it just kind of felt differently. So it's just, you know, even little things like that, you know. Different airplanes had different personalities. The way they handled during the flare was also something else. Mm-hmm. And even more so when we started introducing winglets on some of the 767s, the descent technique, the landing geometry, and the flare technique. It just, you know, it was like flying something entirely different. You know, that thing with winglets, it just did not want to slow down. It did not want to land. You had to actually flare a lot closer to the ground and cut the power a lot higher to get that aircraft to break through that ground effect and actually get it down. And you had to be really, really careful with that when the wind was when the runway was wet and you had a little bit of a tailwind, because you could find yourself in a little bit of trouble there if you didn't handle it correctly. So, you know, different airplanes, different personalities, all of them great.
I noticed that sometimes the way the airplane feels taxiing. Some airplanes just feel great and smooth, and it's just like, wow, this feels like you're on the luxury ride of a nice Cadillac or something like that. And then others is like, you feel like every little ripple in the pavement is like, it's like, how can they be so different? It's just really, it's
yeah. For a while, I was flying one airplane that the shimmy dampener was just, it reached the end of its useful life. It's like, I have to fly this plane again. It's terrible on the ground. It's like,
you know what I mean? Like sometimes you're just like in a like a cruise ship, and it's like you can't even if you went like this with the tiller, you know, it'd still feel really great for everybody in the back. But then sometimes it's no matter how hard you concentrate, it's like it feels terrible. It feels like you're in like an old truck on a dirt road or something. And the other thing I have to just reminded me of the difference between the 88 and the 90. One of the big differences is that the elevator on the 90 is a powered elevator. So when you pull back on the yoke, it's actually a hydraulic system that's moving the control surface, whereas the 88, it's still trim tabs. And so there's a little bit of a lag there when you're flying the 88 and you start your flare. You know, your brain, after you've flown the airplane for a while, kind of syncs up with that. But then I have to kind of remind myself when I'm coming in to land, especially when I'm coming into LaGuardia or DCA, because, you know, you don't have a lot of runway to fool around with. That, okay, I'm in a 90. That means that when I flare, it's actually going to flare and it's not going to lag, whatever, you know. So if I try to apply the same method of flaring the airplane, on the 90 that I do on the 88, well, it's going to go, okay, you want me to, you know, like go, you know, flare right now? Okay, I'll flare right now. And then you're like 10 feet above the runway and you're cruising along and you're eating up all that runway. And, you know, that's not a good idea. So you have to, for me at least, I have to think about it. Okay, I'm in a 90. Remember that the elevator is actually going to react to
And then you start doing one. You start doing one of these. One of those step landings.
No, that's what I mean. I don't know about you. If you've ever flown with the guys or girls,
I hate that.
That are over controlling the airplane, and you're and people in the back think, oh my gosh, the winds must be just horrendous, and wow, and then they're getting off the airplane. Nice landing, wow, great job with the flare there. I'm thinking
windsock.
If you just let go of the controls,
it's just hanging straight down.
If you just let go of the controls, it would have been smooth all the way down.
Yeah. That's the worst. You start over controlling the aircraft and you call for a wind check, and the tower goes, wind calm.
I think I've told the story about the time when I was a captain on the 727. I was flying with a brand new guy, and we were flying into Tucson, and we had to go around twice. There were strong winds, but we had to go around twice, and I was looking back at the fuel plant panel, and we were getting really low on fuel, and I thought, okay, either we divert right now to Phoenix, or maybe I give this guy a break and let me try it. And I said, hey, why don't you, because he was new, just off of IOE. And I thought, maybe you just can't handle these winds. And I flew the darn thing down, and it was like I hardly had to touch the controls, and it was fine. And I realized at that point that he was the one that was causing all the turbulence when we got down, because he was just anxious about how the wind, the strong winds and everything else. But anyway, that was one of those times where I was starting to suck up the cushion, the seat cushion. We're going to run out of fuel, and this is not good.
Mm-hmm.
When you start seeing 3,000 pounds per tank on the 727, it sounds like a lot of fuel, but on the 727, anything below 3,000, you're really starting to sweat, because you don't really know exactly how accurate those gauges are. So
they're accurate when they read 0, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, we're gabbing on and on and on about this stuff. Sorry. It's fun to reminisce about airplanes we've flown in the past and how airplanes feel. Obviously, a subject that we have a lot of feeling for. And it was a great question. Thanks for asking it. Whoever asked it. Let me go back here. Landon. Thank you, Landon.
Yep.
And you know what? I'm looking at the clock now, and we've been going for almost 3 hours. And so that means it's getting to that time where we have to end this thing. And, we still have a lot of feedback, which is great, but got a lot left over here. Just quickly before yes.
And with that last one? Oh,
the
next one.
The Larry.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It's short.
I think that's a good way to end the whole thing. Larry Gregory from Tulsa. I think he calls himself the geezer. I think he's referring to an episode where we were talking about the astronauts and a new definition for potable. And he said, I understand the going green, thing with the recycling of urine into something that we can drink and is potable, which is what potable means. But one day, will airline water come from a cup of Delta P? And of course, he's making a play on words, Delta, the airline, and P, and of course, Rick's favorite subject.
Delta P.
Delta P. Thank you, Larry, for that. And he has a nice little image as well. Maybe we can make that the show.
The show banner.
Yeah, that's
a little, those little urine sample cups, and it has a little logo on it, or airline named Delta. Very, very funny, Larry. All right. Great time again. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us for this nearly 3-hour show. And again, apologies to any of you who are offended by the length of our shows. But I think for the most part, people really enjoy hanging out for hours at a time, especially those in the chat room. Thank you for hanging in there with us. And we do appreciate it, keeping us company. And if you're listening to the audio podcast, again, if you ever have a chance and you see a tweet from 8PG Crew, or if you have the app and you see the push notification that we're recording live, you really owe it to yourself to join us and join the crowd. It's a lot of fun. And sometimes I think they're having more fun than we are.
Definitely.
I know they are.
But anyhow, learn more about the show and the crew by going over to airlinepilotguide.com, or again, if you have an Android or an iOS device, download the Airline Pilot Guy app for free and receive the push notifications. It's a great way to listen to the show, watch the show, etc. We have a YouTube channel, Airline Pilot Guy, all one word there. Again, Twitter at APG Crew is the best way to keep track of what's going on with us and the APG community. We have a Facebook page as well, Airline Pilot Guy. Yeah, you guessed. It's pretty consistent. And let's see what else. Information about the coffee fund, etc. Again, remember that we're planning on heading out to the UK over to the UK in July for Farnborough. Let me see.
Farnborough.
Yeah, exactly. And look forward to meeting many of you there. And what else would you guys like to say before we hit it?
Do we have anything new on the t-shirts perhaps?
No, in fact, Justin was hanging out in the chat room for a while. That's 32 Right Apparel, and I think we're getting close. He's got the art for
all the specifications.
Yeah, and we picked out colors and types of shirt. I think it's going to be we're using the American Apparel T-shirts, which are very popular, and both short sleeve and long sleeve versions, and a hoodie version as well, and then of course our special Farnborough shirt to help us with our fundraising for that. And we really look forward to announcing that soon. I know we keep saying that, but it's going to happen.
It is going to happen, guys and gals.
Stay tuned.
Promise.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Jim. Is that Jim?
Yep.
Jim Merca?
I didn't even know he was there. He's been silently.
I just noticed him kind of
in the chat room.
Poke his head up there. It's a super nice
design.
He
knows the design.
Yeah, it is. I think he knows something about that design. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
Great to have you join us. Let's see. It's about almost 6:00 out there, right, in California. Always good to see you. Anyway, so we look forward to announcing and showing off that great design, and I think you're going to love it. We do. And,
absolutely.
All right. So I guess this is time it's so sad to say goodbye, but we have to. And we're going to be back again next week. When? I'm not sure, but sometime next week for the next episode. So
absolutely.
In the meantime, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care and God bless.
We will see you
next week.
Y'all.
Woohoo! Thanks, Mike. Hey, James. Pina.
Thanks to everyone in the chat room.
We have some, we have some feedback
Good
from Pina, and we haven't forgot it. We have it. We just haven't had time to play it yet. So you'll have to be with us next time.
It's another Rick.
Yeah, there's still a lot of feedback. So if we haven't played your feedback yet, don't worry.
Yeah, we got a lot.
Still
of it.
There.
And we haven't thrown any of it away, as far as I know.
It's all in the feedback folder. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Unless it offends me, and then I throw it away. Just kidding. Nothing offends me. Okay. Let's see. Let me hit the
best way to send voice feedback. So you can record an audio file on your phone and attach it to an email. You have the speak pipe still up on the website, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you still use the Google Voice number? Or
yeah,
not really?
It's still there. Not too many people use it anymore. It's not the greatest quality, but it's an option. 304-99
pilot.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
304-587-8. Shoot, I used to know the numbers for that. Anyway, yeah, as Rick said, 99 pilot. 304, which is a West Virginia area code, 99 pilot, and 587-863. Shoot, that's not right. Oh well. Thank you, Jeff. 867-53. No, that's not right. What is that?
That's Jenny. You'll call Jenny.
Is that Jenny's number? 867-539. Okay.
She's gonna pick.
That's it.
She's not gonna be happy. It's like, dang it, you again?
Yeah, as Steph said, probably the best audio quality is just to use the audio recording app on your smart device and then just attach it to feedback@airlinepilotguy.com. Or SpeakPipe does a nice job too. Stop giving out my number.
Sorry, Jen.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jen.
How do airplanes
Yeah,
fly?
are you limited to the?
I don't know.
Are you limited to 3 minutes on the speak pipe?
I think so.
Though
Yeah.
is that what? Okay,
I think so.
So
I don't think there's any way for
short
me
and sweet.
to lengthen it.
That's what she said.
But yeah, unless I go for a different plan on that or whatever. I'm going to stop the recording on the blab. So bye, everybody. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.